Joshua Sanders, master of the spear, broke traditions and customs that said you must have a sword to be a weapons master. Joshua is considered the strongest person in all of Egner continent, and became such a great and powerful hero that he single-handedly won the entire war for the kingdom of Evelian. But after all these achievements, the powerful hero met his fate in the most horrible way possible, at the hands of his allies. As Joshua lay dying, he asked his allies and friends why they did this to him. They told him that as a weapons master, he was destined to develop his mana power to inhuman levels, and that the holy powers in his body were now fighting against the demonic power they had put in his poison. If he were an ordinary person, he would have died in seconds, but he wasn't normal. Joshua asked them why they betrayed him when he had always served them and never coveted the throne or kingship. His life goal was to show the world his importance and strength as a spear wielder, to escape his past as a concubine's son. The most important thing to him was helping his only friend end the war in his empire and return it to the throne. He had served them as their shield and was ready to die for them. Evergrande, leader of the Mage Tower, told Joshua that some people in this life are dangerous just by existing, and that the Emperor had now returned to power and could extend his control over everyone. They could handle any danger they faced except him. If he decided to destroy the Empire, no one could stop him. Mages spend entire years learning to coat a small knife with mana, but he could easily cover his entire weapon with mana. His spear wasn't normal like him, and he knew he had surpassed human abilities and learned something stronger than sword aura. Joshua, who was dying, looked at the magic orb they had poisoned him with and said this was the magic orb they found in the ruins of Ammon, and that he should have been more careful of it. The Knight Commander told Joshua that he was afraid like everyone else of his brute strength, and that his spear might one day turn toward them. They thanked him for everything he had done for the kingdom so far and said they wouldn't be here without him. They laughed at him and told him to die in peace and leave the rule to them. The Emperor told them he could no longer watch his close friend die, and that it was time for them to leave. Joshua called out to Emperor Caesar, telling him not to be happy and not to think this was his end, that he would take revenge on all of them. They told him no, that he wouldn't survive, and that he was placed under an explosive magic circle to kill him. Joshua was shocked and realized he had no escape from this place, that he was just a stupid spear master deceived by his close friend, and that he would die alone without anyone caring about him. Suddenly, his legendary spear began to react. Joshua was surprised and said his spear had many special abilities he didn't know about. It absorbed a large amount of blood from the battlefield to save the kingdom and pulled Joshua toward the spear. Lucia. He said he would put his work in one last time, grabbed his spear and asked it to save him. The magic circle under Joshua exploded to announce the end of Duke Joshua Sanders, the strongest knight of the Avalon Empire. But suddenly, Joshua woke up in a horse stable, shocked, saying where was he, and that he should be dead from the magic explosion. How was he alive, and why was his body so small? He went out to check the environment outside the stable and realized he had returned in time to his life as a child. Joshua was happy and said his wish had come true, and this was his chance for revenge for what happened to him. Suddenly, a group of soldiers appeared before Joshua asking what he was doing, and that they had asked him to clean the stable. Joshua said these soldiers belonged to his father, P.S.A. They were squad leaders named Rolls, Lloyd, and Gord. Gord asked Joshua why he wasn't answering them, and Lloyd and Rolls told him to calm down, saying Joshua couldn't speak. Joshua said he had pretended in his previous life that he couldn't speak to avoid their beatings. Gord said it had been a while since he'd seen Lucia and asked where she was. Rolls told him to be quiet so the Duke wouldn't hear them and kill them. Joshua said that Lucia they were talking about was his mother, a servant to the Duke's family, and that he was the Duke's youngest illegitimate son because the Duke forced her to bear his child, and then threw her out of the castle. All his followers bullied him because he was related to a servant. He said the three people he most wanted to revenge against were right in front of him now. Lloyd said he missed Lucia and wanted to see her. Rolls warned him, and Lloyd said not to worry because the Duchess had promised them that even if they killed her and Joshua, she would protect them and the Duke wouldn't know anything about the situation. He said since Lucia wasn't around now, they would waste their time beating Joshua. Joshua said he wasn't planning to leave them alive after they insulted his mother and began gathering mana in his hand. He said this mana training method was what he had trained with in his previous life, and no one knew about this method because he had invented it. It could get him to his strongest state in a short time. This method didn't rely on the mana in his body like other methods, but used mana scattered in the air, so he wasn't limited by the mana container in his body. Joshua began absorbing mana from the surrounding air and converting it to his hand, saying he would be able to overcome them since he was used to mana. Gord looked at Joshua and told them he would go hit him, that he got angry every time he looked at him. Gord went to Joshua, saying he wouldn't be able to control himself today because he was angry, but was surprised to find that Joshua wasn't focused on them but had his eyes closed as if sleeping. Joshua, who was gathering mana in his hand, said this method took 10 years in his previous life. but he knew everything about it now and could use it easily. Gord went to attack Joshua, saying his face was angry, but Joshua countered his attack with his mana fist, causing him great damage and saying, "Finished." Rolls and Lloyd were shocked and didn't know what had happened. Joshua noticed something different in his body. He felt disgusting magical power in his mana container that should have been empty. Lloyd drew his sword and went to Joshua, saying he would kill him. Joshua said it was dangerous for him to deal with a sword in his current small body, but if he defeated Lloyd, Rolls might move and attack him too. He said it didn't matter and that he had an idea. Lloyd went to attack Joshua, saying he would kill him, but Joshua dodged his attack quickly, used his mana fist, and attacked him with a strong blow, defeating him. Rolls was shocked and said he never imagined this boy would be this strong, that it was impossible to defeat two knights by chance. Joshua was in pain and said he didn't expect all this pain would come from using mana. He said Rolls was smart and reached his position by using his mind, so he would use this point against him, and that he had to show him he was stronger. Joshua told him he wanted to send a message to the other knights. Rolls was shocked that he could speak. Joshua told him to deliver his message to the knights and all his colleagues that whoever insulted his mother from now on, he would kill them. Rolls was terrified by his great killing intent and quickly fled the place. Joshua said his plan worked and that he had reached his limits, then fainted. The servants in the main castle then talked about Joshua, saying he had easily defeated 3 squad knights and that he had been pretending he couldn't speak to deceive everyone. They said he might be special but wouldn't be like his brother Babel. The second servant said these were all rumors and that it was impossible for a servant's son to do such things. The servant said maybe, but if the rumors were true, a succession war might start between him and his brother Babel. His companion said it was impossible for weak Joshua to defeat Babel. The second servant said exactly, that Babel could use mana, and that Duke Aeginus could use mana when he was 16, but Lord Babel, his son, could use it when he was 14, so he was a genius who surpassed even his father. The servant said their words were correct, and it was impossible for a servant's son to defeat Babel. But suddenly, Joshua appeared before them and they were terrified. Joshua shouted at them to stop talking and go tell the Duke he had arrived at his request. He then went to the Duke, who was interrogating Knight Rolls about what happened. He told him to show him Gord's military uniform and found it destroyed. Aeginus told him that according to his words, Joshua was the one who did all this destruction to Knight Gord. Rolls said yes, and the Duke's assistant Javon told him to think carefully before answering because he might be executed if he lied. Rolls said he wasn't lying. The Duke asked Javon for his opinion, and Javon said he didn't believe his words. The Duke said exactly and asked how old his son was now. Javon said 9 years old. The Duke said it was impossible for him to be 9 years old and be able to destroy military clothing made of orc leather in this way, and that he must have used mana. Javon said impossible, that there was no child in history who was 9 years old and could use mana, and that he would have to be a genius knight, with the ability to use magic to be able to do all this at 9 years old. He said he suspected Rolls and his friends were lying to hide the fact that they were bullying Joshua. He told the Duke to give him the order to take this knight and punish him in front of all his colleagues, so they would be afraid to do this again. Rolls said he wasn't lying. Javon got angry with him and wanted to kill him. The Duke stopped him and said they would discover the truth when they met the real source of the problem, Joshua, and that he was going to meet him now. Javon is surprised that the Duke will go to meet the servant's son, and that he hadn't moved like this before to meet even his own son Babel. The Duke asks Javon where his son lives now, and Javon tells him that the palace summoned him and that he's waiting for him now. He says fine, and that they'll go meet him now. We then go to the palace gate where Joshua is walking in the palace and is shocked when he sees Babel, saying what is the servant's son doing here. Joshua focuses on the portrait of the current Emperor Marcus Van Brighton and becomes very fanatical, saying he will take revenge on his son Caesar as soon as he takes power. Babel goes to attack Joshua and asks him why he's ignoring him and not paying attention to him. Joshua easily blocks his attack and is about to break his hand. Babel is shocked and says the rumor that he defeated 3 knights was true. Joshua tells him he won't let him humiliate him again and gathers mana in his hand, about to strike him, but Duke Javon intervenes and asks them what they're doing. Babel quickly bows before his father and tells him he was greeting his brother, whom he hasn't seen in a long time. The Duke is puzzled and looks at Joshua, who refuses to bow before him. Javon is shocked and says Joshua must have gone crazy, that he didn't bow before the Duke or show him any kind of respect. Javon gets angry and goes to Joshua, telling him to bow before the Duke or he'll kill him. The Duke stops him and tells him to look into his son's eyes, that his eyes are full of hatred and anger. Joshua says he's so angry at his father that he wants to kill him, and that whenever he looks at him he remembers his past, but he must control himself and that his father Duke Aeginus is an enemy whose current strength he can't face. Aeginus tells Joshua if he's calm to come closer to him, that he wants to make sure himself whether he used mana or not. Babel is shocked and says how could Joshua, who lived his whole life in the stable, cleaning the horse's place, have mana? Jephon tells Aeginus it's impossible for his son to have mana at such a young age, and Aeginus tells him he'll make sure himself. Joshua tells himself that his father is one of the 5 strongest people on the continent and that his mana sensitivity is very high, and that all his plans will be ruined if he suddenly discovers the mana in his body. Suddenly, the Duke grabs Joshua's hand and starts sensing the mana in his body and is shocked. Joshua becomes worried and says if he discovers anything about him, he'll have to rearrange all his plans again. Aeginus says Joshua doesn't have mana and is shocked. Babel is happy and says he knew it. Jephon says he told him it's impossible for a 9-year-old child to have mana. Aeginus tells him he's not talking about his mana vessel, but that he has no mana at all in his body, and that any living being is born with a small amount of mana in their body. But Joshua has none at all and is exactly like the dead without any mana in their bodies. Jephon tells him he might have been born this way and that he's heard of cursed children, but he's never been sure about this. Aeginus tells him no, and that he doesn't think he was born without mana, and that he feels a sticky and disgusting substance in place of his mana that he doesn't know what it is. He says they'll watch him from now on, and tells Joshua he'll stay with them in the main palace from today. Babel gets angry and asks him how a servant's son will stay with them. His father asks him if he has an objection to his decision. Babel gets scared and tells him no. Aeginus tells Jephon to start teaching Joshua night techniques, and if he sees him talented and mana appears in him, to start teaching him the red mana specific to their family's knights. Jephon asks him how, when they're still sure now that he has no mana. Aeginus tells him they'll make sure soon and tells Joshua he's placing his hopes on him during this year. He then goes with Jephon to take Joshua to his room and says he'll live here. He's shocked that Joshua didn't show any reaction and says he's a cunning child. Joshua says he changed his way of speaking to him as soon as the Duke walked away from them and says it doesn't matter, that he now needs to focus on increasing his strength. He remembers his father's words and says he's surely expected to succeed in all his training during this year, and that his father spends most of his time in the kingdom's capital, and the reason for his presence here is that he was resting from work. He's puzzled by his father's changed attitude toward him and says he might have discovered something about him that he himself doesn't know, which is terrifying for him. He says it doesn't matter and that he'll find out over time. That night, Joshua escapes from the palace and uses his mana to jump a great distance. He says his mana no longer hurts him like it did the first time he used it, but suddenly, he starts hurting badly and says the holy mana inside his body is reacting with the strange substance planted inside his mana vessel. He says this strange substance must be demon mana. He says there's also a strange power trying to control these two powers so they don't kill him. He remembers the weapon, Lucia, and says surely the spear's power is what's controlling them. Suddenly, the guards hear his voice and go to check on him but find no one because Joshua had escaped. Joshua, who's running from them, says he must find his spear, that it's what will solve all his current problems, and through it, he'll be able to control all the energies in his body. We then go to the 3 knights that Joshua beat, who are holding Lucia's mother. She asks them what they want from her. They tell her that her son was the reason their ranks were lowered and that they'll kill her to get revenge on her son. She tries to escape from them but Lloyd hits her. Gord tells him to hold her steady because he's going to kill her. Rolls tries to stop Gord and says Joshua won't leave them if they kill her. Gord tells him to relax and that Joshua's turn will come after that, and that the Duchess promised them protection if they got rid of them. Gord tells him not to worry and that no one will be able to hold them accountable if they kill her. But suddenly, Joshua appears and tells them to stop what they're doing. They tell him they were waiting for him and that they'll kill his mother in front of him and then kill him. Rolls begs them to stop what they're doing and that this isn't the normal Joshua they know. He tells them he'll kill them all if they don't run away from this place. Joshua looks at the ceiling and tells the person above to get out of here. He looks at the knights and tells them he'll give them one last chance before he kills them. Lloyd goes to Joshua, saying he's the one who'll kill him this time. Joshua ignores him and looks at the ceiling again, telling the hidden person that he told him to get out of here and said he doesn't know who he's talking to and that he seems to have gone crazy. But suddenly, the hidden knight comes down from the ceiling and everyone present is surprised and asks who he is. This knight asks Joshua how he knew his location and that it's impossible for anyone normal to discover him. He can recognize the red cross on his chest and says he's one of the missionary knights for Duke Aeginus, meaning his presence here means Jephon sent him. The knights quickly stop and the knight goes to Joshua and says he's heard a lot about him. Joshua releases his aura and terrifies the knight, asking him what the punishment would be for these knights who tried to harm him and his mother. The knight is shocked by his aura and says that a strong knight like him isn't even able to move under the pressure of his power. He tells Joshua their punishment would be immediate death. This knight goes to attack them quickly. Lloyd tries to attack him but he finishes him in seconds. Gord tries to attack him but Knight Keen counters his attack and attacks him, finishing him too. He then goes to attack Rolls. Rolls tells him he didn't do anything, and that he tried to stop them, but they didn't listen to him. Joshua intervenes and tells Keen he asked him not to kill him. Keen tells him, but this knight tried to threaten and kill him and his mother, and that he must be punished with death now. Joshua says there are 3 knight squads directly under the Duke's command and that the Red Knight squad is the weakest among them, meaning that Keen being sent to watch him means he's surely the weakest among his squad, and that he must be a C-level knight to be able to defeat 3 knights so easily like this. Joshua asks Keen whom he serves. Keen tells him he serves Duke Agenis. Joshua tells him since he serves his father, he'll surely serve his orders too. Keen looks at him and gets scared, saying he has the same terrifying eyes as the Duke. Joshua asks him to draw his sword, and Keen obeys his orders and actually draws the sword. Rolls thanks Joshua for saving his life and that he'll be indebted to Joshua for life. He tells him he doesn't need his thanks and that he doesn't forgive anyone who tried to threaten him or his mother. He tells him he's a smart knight, so he'll understand his words, and tells him to go tell what he saw to the rest of his soldiers and knights loyal to his father, and that if any of them dares again to raise a hand against his mother, this will be their fate. He tells him to run away from him quickly before he changes his mind and kills him. Indeed, Rolls quickly runs away from the place. Keen asks Joshua if he's really the Joshua they know, and that he's changed a lot from before. Joshua tells him if he means the servant's son who couldn't speak or defend his mother, that child is already dead. Keen is shocked and impressed by him. He tells Joshua that all the duchy's knights follow Duke Agenis's orders, but as soon as they turn 23, they can choose their own master to serve, and that next year he'll turn 23 and will be able to choose his own master. He tells him his judgment has never been wrong about people, and that next year he'll leave Duke Agenis's service and serve him. Joshua laughs and says his choice of him instead of choosing Babel, the family genius, means his eye really doesn't make mistakes. Lucia, Joshua's mother, wakes up from her unconsciousness. Joshua goes to hug her and tells her he intends to protect her from now on, and that he won't let anyone else from the past be able to fix his mistakes again, and that he doesn't intend in this life to be the illegitimate son of the servant whom the whole world bullies, but he'll be Joshua, master of the spear, whom the whole world fears his power. We then go to Aegenes, who is talking with Jephon, and Jephon tells him that Count Rebecca is coming to visit him tomorrow, and that he's not coming alone, but with his daughter Wassilian. Aegenes tells him that he knows what he's planning and says that Count Rebecca's power is weaker than his duchy's power, but his influence on the kingdom is great, and it's not good to ignore him. He says his daughter is a talented sorceress who managed to reach the second magic circle when she was 9 years old, and that she was born with the blessing of mana and magic. He says the count is definitely coming with his daughter to try to betroth her to his son, Babel, to strengthen the relations between the two families. Jephon says that Babel will turn 18 in 3 years, and then he must marry from a big family to increase their political power. Aegenes tells him definitely, but they've already decided on his fiancée, and that he will betroth Princess Charlie, and that they have great authority and huge amounts of resources and money, and they must unite their power together. Jephon tells him definitely, and that the most suitable choice is Charlie because of her family's power and wealth. Aegenes tells him definitely, but he doesn't want Selin to slip away from them to anyone, and he must add her power to his family as well. Jephon says the Duke's greed is unnatural and that he wants to add everyone's power for his benefit, and that's why he admires his wisdom. Duke Aegenes suddenly stands up and tells him that he got an idea, and that he can marry his son Joshua to Selin. Jephon is shocked and tells him it's impossible for them to marry Selin, who has the blessing of mana, to Joshua, who has the curse of mana. We then go to Joshua, who is in a distant land on the borders of the duchy. He says he used to come to this place in his previous life because his mother was buried here, and he wanted to be beside her, but he accidentally discovered an entrance to a secret world located in this place. Joshua goes feeling around the ground and says he reached the place where he found his Lucia spear. He wounds himself and drops a little blood on a magic spell to open a portal to the secret world. Joshua enters this portal and moves to an ancient archaeological place. Joshua walks around the place and says this isn't the same place he knows from his previous life, and that it wasn't destroyed in this way. He says when he first entered this place it was intact and Lucia's spear was chained in front of him. Joshua enters the main room and doesn't find Lucia's spear, but finds a metal piece in its place. He's confused about what's happening. Joshua tries to grab this metal piece, but its magic activates and transports him to its spiritual world. Joshua is shocked and doesn't know what happened or where he suddenly went. This metal piece appears behind him and Joshua is surprised and asks what this is. It responds and tells him, I am the spear of the Demon King, Lucia. Joshua is shocked and asks how it's the Demon King's spear, and that this means the spear he used throughout his previous life belonged to the Demon King. He asks what changed its form like this and says maybe the past changed by his return. Lucia tells him he doesn't have much time to talk and tells him that the two energies inside her are fighting each other, and if they continue this way they will kill him. The only way to control these two powers without dying is to train and increase his strength and reach the 4th level of magical spear art. Joshua is surprised and says this art is what he invented in his previous life, and that he uses his own mana combined with his spear skill to produce magical spear art. Their idea is that the sword is the greatest weapon and the spear is considered a trivial weapon to them, but he proved the opposite of their words to the point that none of them could duel him equally even when he was still in the 4th stage of magical spear art. He says, the maximum power a swordsman can reach is a level swordsman who can form a sword with his own mana, and these are called sword masters. But his sword art is divided into 8 stages, and he was the strongest knight in the entire continent when he reached the 5th stage. If he reaches the 4th stage now, he'll be stronger than even a B-level knight. He says it's easy for him to reach his full power easily because he did it before, but his problem will be time. The biggest problem he'll face now is mana, because whenever he trains on it, the holy mana and demon mana start fighting inside him. Lucia tells him to be reassured and that he can use mana in limited amounts as long as she's with him and that she'll protect Joshua. He's surprised and happy that he can train with mana again. Lucia tells him to start training and regain his old strength. And as soon as he becomes a spear master again, her role will be finished, and he'll start looking for another weapon besides her. Joshua doesn't understand her words and asks what she means, but she disappears and tells him to regain your strength quickly. Joshua holds Lucia and says there are many questions he needs answers to, but currently as long as he has Lucia, he can use mana and train with it. His mana training method is rare and powerful, and no one knows anything about it. He starts gathering mana from the air around him and says he's now opening the first circle in magical spear art. He actually manages to open the first circle of Spear Master and says he can now focus mana in his spear and use it. He actually manages to draw mana and pump it into his weapon and destroys the place around him. He says this is just the beginning, and his revenge will start from now. Then we go to the party at Duke Aegonus's palace. The Duke and Jeffon arrive and the Duke is surprised and says they have unexpected guests today. Charlie Bonte welcomes him and says it's been a long time since she saw him. Aegonus asks her what she's doing in the palace at this late hour. Charlie's assistant apologizes to him and tells him she couldn't wait until the party time, so she came early. Aegonus tells him there's no need to apologize, and that he wanted to see him because he can't see him in the capital. Aegonus says Count Kokas is the chief of Duke Bonte's personal followers, and that no trade and money passes Duke Bonte, except when it passes Kokas first. Aegonus offers Kokas to join his family and remain his follower. Charlie tells him he's still greedy as she knows him, and that he tries to steal other families' treasures and followers as usual. Kokas tries to stop Charlie and tells her to speak respectfully. Aegonus tells him to leave her and that he's used to this from her, and he was wondering why she was speaking to him respectfully earlier. Charlie tells him she heard that Babel became a C-level knight, and that she might start recruiting him in her knights soon. Kokas shouts at her and tells her to speak about the Duke's son, respectfully, and apologizes to the Duke, saying she's acting like children. Aegonus tells him it doesn't matter and that he likes her style. Then Aegonus goes to Count Rebecca and welcomes him and his daughter Selin, saying he didn't notice he was at the party. Selin goes to introduce herself to the Duke and greet him. Charlie gets angry and says, "What are the Count and his daughter doing here?" Kokas tells her to control herself and not make problems here. Charlie tells them it's true. She heard that the concubine's son Joshua defeated 3 squad leaders. Kokas shouts at her and tells her to be quiet so she doesn't make problems between the families. She tells him to calm down and that she just wanted to know the truth. Jeffon intervenes and tells her all this is rumors and that Joshua is not only weak but also born with mana curse, and it's impossible for him to defeat 3 squad leaders alone. Count Rebecca intervenes and asks if he's really born with mana curse. Aegonus tells him he doesn't know and needs his help with this matter. He tells him he's one of the few sorcerers in the kingdom whose ability reached the 5th magic circle and his sensitivity to mana will definitely be greater than his, and he might know Joshua's problem. Rebecca says this might be the opportunity for cooperation between the families and agrees to Aegonus's offer. Jeffon tells Aegonus they want to solve Joshua's problem before he travels to the capital, and they should make sure whether he really has mana curse or not. Aeginus asks him how he intends to do this. Jeffon tells him he'll put knights to watch him. Aeginus tells him it's impossible for him to want to put Red Squad knights to watch him, and that he's a 9-year-old child who doesn't deserve all this surveillance. Jeffon tells him if he's strong, like the rumors say, they should watch him, and there's a knight under his service watching him from now, and he's sure of his plan. Then Jeffon goes to meet Kane in his office and asks him about what happened to the squad leaders. Kane tells him he executed them on the spot. Jeffon tells him he has full authority over the squad leaders because he's above them, but he was hasty. Kane tells him they were trying to hurt the Duke's wife. Jeffon is shocked and asks him how this happened and is very upset, saying how dare they act like this to Duchess Vanessa. Kane says it's not Duchess Vanessa but Lucia. Jeffon calms down and asks him he killed squad leaders for just a servant. Kane tells him she's considered the Duke's wife as well, and insulting and hurting her is considered insulting the Duke. And if he sees he made a mistake in his decision, he can punish him. Jeffon says it doesn't matter and he wants him on a new mission. He says he wants him to duel with Joshua today. Kane is surprised and asks why. Jeffon tells him they want to make sure whether he's really born with Mana curse or not to end the spreading rumors, and the Duke is still putting his hope on Joshua, and they must prove to the Duke that he's weak. So Babel gets all the attention and support from the Duke. Kane tells him, but he thinks Joshua is stronger than Babel. Jeffon shouts at him and tells him impossible, and that Babel is a genius compared to anyone else, and impossible to compare with a disabled child like Joshua. Kane says he hasn't seen Joshua for real, and that he's like a meteor that will fall on Earth and destroy them all. Jeffon tells him he wants him in the fight against Joshua to inject him with a little of his mana, and if he was really afflicted with Mana curse, his body should reject this mana, and Mana is like poison to curse people, and he'll die within 10 days if he really has Mana curse. Kane is shocked by his words and says he knew he was supporting Babel but didn't think he would want to do dirty acts like this. Then Kane goes to the training ground before the battle and says even if it's orders from his direct commander, he won't execute them, and it's impossible for him to hurt Joshua, and that he's his future master and decided to protect him. Joshua goes to Kane and says he heard he'll duel him. Kane tells him yes, and these are the Duke's orders to test his strength. Joshua says his father definitely noticed something different about him, and he'll start executing his plan now. Kane tells Joshua to be reassured, and he's not intending to fight him seriously, so he won't get hurt. Joshua shouts at him and asks if he's underestimating him. He says he knows knights have the right to choose their masters, but he also has the right to choose his followers, and he won't choose him if he thinks his master is weak and doesn't want to fight him seriously. If he wants to be a knight among his knights, he must fight him seriously. At this moment, the Duke arrives with the Count and Charlotte. Kane greets the Duke. Jeffon looks at Joshua and says he still doesn't respect the Duke either, but suddenly Joshua goes to greet his father. Jeffon is shocked. Aeginus tells Joshua he doesn't remember teaching him noble etiquette, but it's good that he knows it himself. Joshua tells him he can learn anything by himself and says he knows he brought him today in a duel to test his strength. Jeffon says he's wrong and the Duke doesn't want to test his strength but wants to be reassured about him, and he's worried about him and wants to see if he has any disability so they can treat it. Joshua says Jeffon is trying to prove his weakness, so Babel gets all the support from their father and that he's definitely planning to kill him. The Duke asks Joshua and Kane if they're ready, and Kane tells him he's ready. The Duke tells Kane that he misunderstood and that he's not the person who will duel Joshua, but the one who will duel him is the second son Babel. Babel steps forward and says he's the older brother and it's his right to test the younger brother's strength. Aeginus tells them this fight will be a training duel, so they'll use wooden swords. Babel tells him sure, and that he won't put in any effort to fight someone weak like Joshua. Joshua says that Babel and Jeffon want him to die, so they made this play, so he'll show them his own play. He goes and grabs a big wooden stick and breaks it, telling them he'll use this to fight. They're surprised and Charlie keeps laughing at him, saying he looks crazy. Jeffon goes to Joshua and says he's mocking them like this and that it's impossible to fight anyone with wooden pieces. Aeginus stops him and asks Joshua if he's sure. Joshua tells him yes, and the Duke agrees and tells everyone to clear the fighting area. He tells Babel it's forbidden for him to use mana in their private fight. Babel tells him not to worry and that he won't waste his strength on someone weak like Joshua. Babel asks Joshua what he's going to do against him with a piece of wood and that he looks like he's used to it because of cleaning the stable. The Duke tells him to stop talking and start fighting. Babel goes to attack Joshua with all his strength, but Joshua blocks his attack and tries to hit him. Babel dodges his attack and says he looks like he's learning a new trick, but it won't work against him. He tries to attack his leg and Joshua says he's weak and that even though he's a C-level knight, he only has speed. He attacks Babel's hand and manages to hit him. Babel gets angry and tells him not to cross his limits and that he's just a concubine's son and won't forgive him. He goes to attack him again, but Joshua manages to hit him too before he reaches him. Joshua is surprised that Babel was able to withstand his blow and says he's not as weak as he expected. Babel gets angry and goes to attack him with his mana, saying he won't forgive him. Agenus tells Babel to stop what he's doing quickly, but Babel continues his attack, and there's a big mana explosion. They're surprised and look to find Babel's sword broken, and Joshua started using his mana against him. Rebecca is shocked and says Joshua can use mana. Babel can't believe that Joshua can use mana and says what will his father do if he knows Joshua is stronger than him. He goes to attack Joshua and says he'll be the heir of the duchy. Joshua says it doesn't matter to him whether he's an heir or not, and that the duchy will be destroyed within 10 years because of the civil war inside the kingdom. But if he can control the duchy before the war, he'll change events. So he'll be the heir of this duchy. He goes to attack Babel with his mana, and Duke Agenus uses his massive mana to stop them, telling them the fight is over and he won't forgive anyone who doesn't listen to him. Jephon is shocked and says Joshua can use his mana and he's 9 years old, and this is something he's never heard of in history. Duke Agenus tells Jephon that they've now confirmed Joshua's strength. Jephon tells him, yes, but he's never seen this type of mana before. Rebecca tells Agenus that he really used mana and that his mana level is much greater than Babel's. But he uses a type of mana unknown to him, especially its great concentration. Charlie is surprised and says she didn't expect the servant's son to be this strong. Agenus tells Joshua that he impressed him and that he can use mana at 9 years old. Jephon tries to stop Agenus and says Joshua shouldn't interfere in the succession war, but Agenus yells at him and tells him to watch his words in front of him. Agenus tells Joshua that he wants to talk to him about something, so he'll come to his room tonight. Everyone present is shocked and says Agenus has never summoned anyone to his room before. Babel is shocked and says it's impossible what's happening and that the servant's son has surpassed him in everything. Joshua annoys Babel and tells his father he'll carry out his request. Then Charlie goes to her room with Kokus and tells him she wasn't expecting the servant's son to be this strong and that he can use mana, and she's very excited. She tells Kokus she's decided, and he asks her what her decision is. She tells him she's decided to make Joshua her king. Then we go to Jephon, who is talking with Venetia, Agenis's wife and sister of the current king of the country. She asks him what happened to her son Babel. Jephon tells her he lost in the duel against Joshua. She hits him again and asks him how he allowed this to happen and that she knows Joshua turned out to use mana and now uses it better than her son Babel. She asks him what the Duke intends to do with Joshua. He tells her the Duke intends to take him to the capital. She asks him why, and he tells her because he recognized Joshua's talent, so he wants to keep his eyes on him all the time to protect him. Jephon tells her things will be worse from here on for them. She tells him all this happened because of him and that he failed in his mission. Jephon tells her not to worry and that he has a solution to their problem. She asks him what, and Jephon tells her that Duke Agenus will definitely announce to the whole kingdom that his son Joshua has become a C-level mana user. She asks him why he would do that, and that he should try to hide him until he grows up. Jephon tells her because there were many witnesses in the fight like Count Rebecca and Count Kokus, and they'll spread the news even without the Duke's knowledge. He tells her that as soon as the news spreads, Joshua must enter a test against a royal knight to officially promote to a C-level knight, and that he must prove his strength against this knight in an official battle. Venetia is happy and tells him his words are correct, and he must duel one of the royal knights, so she'll talk to her uncle and send him a royal knight to finish him off. Then we go to Joshua, who goes to meet his father, Agenus, in his room, and greets him as usual. His father asks him who he is, and Joshua is surprised by his question and says he's Joshua. Agenus tells him he's changed greatly from his previous knowledge of him. Joshua tells him that time changes people. Agenus asks him if he hates him or feels resentment because of his treatment of him. Joshua tells him no, and that he knows he was doing all this because of the royal family's surveillance of him. But despite this, he wants a request from him. His father is surprised and asks him what the request is and asks him if he wants him to apologize for his treatment of him and his mother. Joshua tells him no, and that apology has no use in their world. He tells him his request is related to the decision to take him to the royal capital. Agenus tells him how does he know he intends to take him to the royal capital. Joshua tells him he's sure he'll take him. Agenus asks him why, and Joshua tells him because Babel was supposed to be his successor, but his appearance changed everything in the family, and he can't leave him alone in the palace to avoid problems with the Duchess, so he'll distance him from them. Agenus is surprised by his response and says he's not only talented but smart too, and that if he had known him from the beginning, he would have been an unmatched talent. Joshua tells him the second reason is that he'll try to hide him from the kingdom's grip, so he won't lose a great talent like him, and that if he can surpass his strength, he'll be able to remain the family's leader and restore their power and prestige again before the royal family, to the degree that the royal family won't be able to object to any of their decisions again. Aeginus tells him if he speaks with such great confidence, he's definitely confident in his strength. Joshua tells him he's confident in his strength and won't disappoint his expectations. Aeginus says he's surprised by his confidence in answering and asks him if he knows the solution to the two problems he mentioned. Joshua tells him the natural solution is for him to go to the capital and enter the Royal Academy, and that all children of noble families can enter this academy and graduate early if they're talented like Babel, and that the reason the Edi royal family made this academy is so they can discover talents and plant loyalty to the royal family in them. Aeginus tells him his words are correct, and that he'll take him to the capital and teach him dueling himself in his free time. Joshua says he wasn't imagining that one of the 5 sword masters would offer to train him personally, but it doesn't matter. He tells his father he doesn't intend to use the sword and that he'll use the spear. His father is shocked and releases all his power, saying he was worried when he chose the wooden stick in the duel, but now he knows why, and it's impossible for him to let him remain a spear wielder. Joshua is shocked by the amount of great mana his father released and says it's pressing on him, but as long as he's proud of his sword, he too will be proud of his spear. He releases his mana and manages to withstand his father's power, telling his father he'll be the strongest knight in history and will point his spear at anyone who stands in his way, to the degree that he'll also face the 9 stars. His father is surprised by his words and tells him he's arrogant to the degree that he says he can defeat the 9 stars, and as long as he's confident in himself to this degree, he must see his strength himself. Joshua asks him what he means, and his father tells him since he compares himself to the 9 stars, he'll duel him since he's one of the 9 stars. Joshua says facing his father will be exciting for him, and he shouldn't miss it. His father asks him if he agrees, and Joshua tells him he definitely agrees, but with a condition. His father asks him what, and he tells him if he succeeds in the test, he wants him to accept a request from him. His father tells him he agrees and that if he succeeds in his test, he'll let him use the spear and also fulfill any request for him, but if he fails, he'll listen to his orders without discussion and go to the academy and learn swordsmanship. We then go to Duchess Venetia, who is talking to someone in the royal palace, and tells him she spoke to him because he's the most trustworthy person she can rely on in the royal palace, and she wants him to do her a favor to eliminate one of her enemies. Joshua then comes out from his father's place, feeling happy, saying this is what's expected from someone who reached the level of sword master, and his body is still trembling from facing him. His brother Babel appears before him and says he wants to talk to him, but Joshua tells him he's not free and doesn't want to talk to him. Babel stops him and says he wants to enter into a duel with him. Joshua, looking at him, finds his eyes different from before. He's enthusiastic and wants to beat him to restore his position as the best in the family again. Joshua tells him he agrees to his proposal, but he shouldn't regret it. We then go to the royal capital in Avalon's royal palace and see Emperor Marcus listening to his intelligence report, saying he can't believe a new talent has emerged in their empire, specifically within Duke Aeginus's family. He asks his follower if his sister Venetia was the one trying to hide this child from him. The follower tells him this child isn't Venetia's son but the concubine's son. The emperor is surprised and says Duke Aeginus has great talent like Babel, but having such talent makes him very jealous of him. The follower tells him, but his prince sons are also talented like them. And Marcus tells him he's right, that he's wrong, and that there are indeed some among them who could inherit the empire from him, but none of them can lead his personal army and be the strongest knight in the kingdom. The follower says the emperor greatly underestimates his children, despite their talent, because he has very high standards in evaluating talents since he's among the sword masters on the continent, which is why he's always greedy to acquire the greatest number of talents. The emperor tells him that as long as Duke Aeginus doesn't want to hide his second son anymore, his talent must be exactly like Babel's. The follower tells him no, and that the information that reached him is that he defeated his brother Babel in an official duel. The emperor is surprised and asks how old he is. The follower tells him he's 9 years old. The emperor is shocked and says a 9-year-old child defeated the empire's greatest talent and made him kneel before him. He keeps laughing and says this boy has won his interest, and he wants to see him personally. The follower tells him that Duke Aeginus has also started his moves and requested royal knights to evaluate him, and according to reports, this child will be at sea-level knight status. The emperor says a sea-level knight at 9 years old is something that makes him very enthusiastic, and he wants to see him himself. The follower asks if he intends to go himself to measure this child's power, and that his movement would mean he directly supports and sponsors the child. The emperor tells him no, he can't move and see him himself because there are many enemies watching him and waiting for him to make a mistake. but he intends to send one of his prince sons to evaluate his power himself, and he must make sure of this child's strength. We then go to the battle between Joshua and Babel. Joshua attacks Babel with his mana-wrapped hand and throws him far away. Babel is shocked and says he's not using his weapon but only using his mana-wrapped hand, yet the power of his attacks is unnatural. Joshua tells him he knows what he's thinking and that he'll show him his combat power and how terrifying it is. Babel gets angry and attacks him with his mana sword, telling him to stop mocking him, but Joshua attacks him with his own mana explosion and throws him far away. Babel is shocked and says he was able to concentrate all his mana in just his hand, and he doesn't want to admit this, but Joshua is much stronger than him. Joshua goes to him and asks if he's angry at him, saying that if he's really angry, he should stay stronger to get rid of the humiliation he's living in now. He says he could kill him for insulting him and his mother, but he'll leave him alive because of the look of weakness and desire to win in his eyes. But if his behavior doesn't change in the future, he'll keep beating him to the point where he won't be able to hold a sword again. Joshua leaves him and walks away, telling him not to forget the huge gap in power between them. The next morning, Joshua wakes up in pain, saying he used a large amount of mana yesterday in the fight against Babel, and although his mana control improved because he retrieved Lucia's weapon again, the side effects are still present in his body. Suddenly, he finds someone knocking on his room door. He goes to open it, wondering who it is, but finds Charlie in front of him. She tells him she was eager to meet him. He asks who she is, and she tells him she's Duke Ponte's daughter, and she heard he's 3 years younger than her, so she won't deal with him formally. She enters his room and tells him he can call her big sister if he likes. Joshua stops her before she enters and tells her to disappear from his sight, kicks her out and slams the door in her face. She's shocked by his behavior toward her. Joshua says he's surprised that the first thing he sees early in the morning is this crazy girl. Suddenly, he finds the door being knocked again and he goes out, screaming, asking who's knocking, thinking it's Charlotte, but finds Ken, who gets scared of him. Joshua apologizes to him and says he thought he was an annoying person, and asks if he finished the request he told him about. Ken says he finished but doesn't know the purpose of what he's doing. Joshua tells him not to worry and that he should trust his master. We then go to the grand training hall in the Duchy Palace and see 2 company commanders going to Rolls and telling him they haven't seen Jord and Lloyd for a long time, asking where they went. The second knight tells him they heard rumors that they were killed by Joshua. Rolls doesn't respond to them and they're puzzled by his behavior, saying they were very arrogant in the past and used to bully Joshua and his mother all the time, but now he seems very scared for some strange reason. The knight asks his companion who requested the gathering of company commanders. His companion tells him that one of the Red Squad members requested all company commanders to gather. Ken arrives with Joshua and everyone stands to greet him. Rolls is shocked and says what is Joshua doing here. Ken tells all company commanders that today's training will be led by Joshua. Joshua tells them he's the one who requested their gathering today, and that company commanders are the ones who will be at the front of the Duke's army in case of any war, and must be strong and ready. For this reason, he came to them personally to train them. All company commanders mock him and say it's impossible for a child to train them, especially the servant's son. Ken asks Joshua if he's sure, saying the company commanders are strong. The company commanders keep making fun of Joshua and tell him he'll definitely get injured fighting them. Joshua takes his spear and goes to Rolls, asking if he thinks he'll get injured, like they're saying. Rolls tells him impossible and that he's strong. Joshua tells him to shut up, and that judging by the company commander's reaction, he didn't tell them anything about what he told him. Rolls apologizes to him and asks him to forgive him. Joshua tells him he told him before that he doesn't forgive anyone, and that he gave him a first chance instead of killing him, but he didn't follow his words, and now he'll end up like Jord and Lloyd. All company commanders are shocked and say the rumors were true, and Joshua really eliminated Jord and Lloyd. Rolls asks Joshua to give him another chance, and Joshua tells him his last chance instead of killing him immediately is to duel him, and if he wins the duel against him, he'll leave him alive. Rolls says he has no other choice, and since he's dead, either way, he'll try to kill him. He goes to attack Joshua, but Joshua uses his lightning spear and strikes him with a powerful blow and eliminates him. The company commanders are shocked that Joshua can use mana. Joshua tells them they're stupid for judging their opponent by mere appearance and tells them if any of them isn't sure of his power, he'll allow him to face him so they can be sure themselves. The company commanders go to Joshua to salute him and tell him they acknowledge his power. Ken saw what happened and says Joshua's plan succeeded and he was confident in him. We then go to Charlie, who is sitting sadly in her room because of what Joshua did to her. Kokas comes to her quickly and tells her he's brought her good news. She tells him she's not interested. Kokas is surprised and tells her she's been upset since morning, asking if something happened. She tells him to leave her alone. He goes to carry out her father's orders. Kokas tells her he had forgotten the Duke's orders, and he'll go execute them right away, and that they came specifically to execute her father's order. Charlotte is sad and says she wants to see Joshua. We then go to Duke Aeginus, who asks Joshua why he punished roles in front of all company commanders. Joshua tells him he was trying to hurt his mother and insult her, so he executed his legal right because he insulted a noblewoman and he punished him. His father tells him he knows, and if he had known about this earlier he would have cut off his head, but this way he also lost 3 company commanders from the duchy. Joshua tells him not to worry and that he had planned everything. His father tells him he doesn't understand. Joshua tells him that 2 days ago he was just a concubine's child working in the stables and everyone bullied him, but it's impossible to suddenly become the duchy's pride and gain the soldiers' trust, so he had to use his power against them to plant fear and terror in their hearts, and this way, no company commander or anyone else will be able to insult him or his mother. His father tells him there's logic in his words, and tells him to get ready to receive the royal knights who came to evaluate his power. We then see the duchy's Golden Black Squad commander Armstrong, saying he hadn't imagined that 2 of the Duke's sons would reach sea-level knights while they haven't even come of age yet. Jifon gets angry and says one of them is the concubine's son. He goes to mock him and says he's definitely angry because Babel lost to Joshua. Jifon gets angry and asks where he learned this. At this moment, Duke Aeginus and Joshua arrive. Aeginus tells them to stop fighting. Armstrong greets the Duke and looks at Joshua, saying he doesn't look as powerful as they say. Suddenly, the Royal Knights delegation arrives at the palace. Jifon is shocked and says what kind of person came with the Royal Knights that they sent a complete squad of knights to protect him. At this moment, the Empire's 4th prince and Joshua's traitorous friend, Caesar, appears. Joshua gets angry as soon as he sees him and says he hadn't imagined that the opportunity for revenge would come this early. A little before that, a group of royal knights goes and they are being defeated by a royal knight named the Joker, who is the commander of the 1st Battalion of Royal Knights, and they ask him to stop, but he continues torturing them. At this time, Phoenicia's uncle arrives and says that he knew he would find him here and that if he continues torturing the recruits, no knight will agree to join the Royal Knights again. He says that he was angry with them because they are arrogant with the little mana they have, and asks him why he is here. He tells him that he brought him a mission from the Duchess that he still has. We return again to the present, and the Joker is standing in front of Joshua and his group, and says that Phoenicia's orders are to make sure that Joshua will never be able to carry a sword again in his life. Caesar says to Joshua that he heard many rumors about him, and Joshua gets angry with him and doesn't respond. Caesar's assistant, the magician Evergrande, tells Joshua to show respect to the 4th prince, and Joshua says that there shouldn't be 2 sons in the kingdom and that they all serve only one lord, which is the emperor, and that he doesn't have to show respect to a weak prince who might not even remain emperor. Knight Brown advances with his soldiers and says that Joshua has lost his mind and that he's just a concubine's child who lived in a horse stable. It's impossible to let him talk this way to the prince. The commander of the Golden Division, Armstrong, intervenes and tells him that if he advances any closer to Joshua, he will kill them all. Brown asks him why he's defending the concubine's son, and he tells him that Joshua is a member of the Duke's family and his loyalty is to him. Duke Aeginus intervenes with his massive mana to stop them and asks them if they want to die. Brown is shocked by the amount of his mana and says that he expected nothing less from one of the 9 stars. Aeginus tells Joshua that his words are the cause of all these problems and tells him to apologize to the prince. Caesar tells him it's not important and that he doesn't have to apologize and that his words are correct. His assistant, the magician Evergrande, tells him that if he doesn't make him apologize like this, the royal family will lose its prestige in front of everyone. Caesar tells him not to worry and that he brought the insult only upon himself because he is weak, and that his words are correct, and that the person who deserves all respect is the emperor. He tells Joshua to succeed in his test, so as not to be a weak prince like him who doesn't deserve respect. Joshua says that he remembers his deceptive way of speaking well, but he won't let him overcome him in this life, and that he will cut off his head as soon as he reaches the peak of his glory. He tells Caesar that he's ready to accept his challenge if he wants to face him. Knight Joker intervenes and says that he's still insulting their prince and that he won't forgive him. He asks Caesar to let him be the one to evaluate him in the knight's test. Caesar allows him and says that he's the most suitable person because he's a B-level knight and can control his power and judge people well. The Joker laughs and says that he will give Joshua a final and ultimate evaluation. The two prepare for the duel in the training ground of the Duke's palace. The Joker asks Joshua if he's joking and that it's impossible that he brought just a metal stick to duel with, and that he's definitely underestimating them because rumors say he's talented. Joshua says that he talks too much and that it seems royal knights are chosen based on their talking abilities, not fighting. The Joker tells him that he will regret his words and insults. But before he can finish his words, he finds Joshua attacking him with his mana spear. The Joker quickly dodges his attack and is shocked by the amount of his mana, saying that it's the first time he sees this mana. He blocks Joshua's attack and says it doesn't matter and that he will close the distance between them to defeat him. Joshua knows his plan and says that many tried to close the distance between them to defeat him, but they all failed. He uses his spear and attacks the Joker with a direct attack. The Joker blocks it at the last moment, and Joshua continues his attack from all directions. The Joker keeps retreating from his attacks. Caesar says that Joshua is very strong, and that he can fight with a B-level knight and pressure him. Brown tells him that the Joker is reducing his power level to match Joshua's strength, but his words are actually true, and that Joshua is superior to the Joker in terms of his techniques and that his spear dueling style is also very strong. The Joker, who is blocking Joshua's attacks, says that his situation is very bad and that if he can't execute Phoenicia's orders, she will cut off his head. He says that he must use all his strength. Joshua says that this is expected from a B-level knight, and that he can deal with his strong attacks. The Joker uses all his strength and says that the only person who can stop his attack on Joshua here is Eginus, but he won't be able to stop him because of his great speed. He attacks Joshua with a direct attack, and Joshua is greatly injured by the attack. Armstrong tells the Duke that the Joker is using all his B-level strength, and this is not allowed, and that Joshua is in danger and that he must stop him. Aeneas tells him no, and tells him to look carefully. The Joker goes to attack Joshua again and says that he blocked his attack because he concentrated his mana in only one point, but he won't be able to do this again. He continues his attack on Joshua and says there's no use, and that his mana won't be enough for him to defend against him. Brown asks the Joker what he's doing and tells him to stop immediately. The Joker attacks Joshua and a huge mana explosion occurs, and everyone present is surprised. The Joker is shocked and says that a great mana appeared and forced him to retreat backward, and he doesn't understand what happened. Joshua had summoned the true form of his spear, Lucia, to block his attack. We see moments before when the Joker attacked him, and Joshua says that he won't be able to block this attack with his current strength. The Joker says that the collision of his mana with Joshua's little mana will destroy his body from the inside, and thus he will execute Phoenicia's orders. Joshua says that this move is dangerous for him, but he must do this to counter his attack. He summons his spear, Lucia, in its true form, and blocks the Joker's attack. Jeffon is shocked and says that Joshua has a magical tool. Caesar tells Brown to stop the fight and that they've seen Joshua's strength already, and that his power is truly amazing. Joshua keeps mocking the Joker and asks him what he thinks of his strength and that he blocked his strongest attack easily. The Joker says he doesn't know what he did but he will kill him, but Brown arrives and tells them that the duel is over and that Joshua's evaluation is finished. He looks at Joshua and says that he didn't expect that a C-level knight would block the strongest attack of an expert B-level knight, and that when they were testing Babel, they weren't as impressed with his strength as they are with Joshua, and that Joshua's talent is rare. Brown goes to Joshua and tells him that he announces his promotion to C-level knight. Joshua says that he's not interested in ranks or anything because he won't serve the Emperor, but he can't move right now because all the mana in his body is exhausted. Caesar congratulates Joshua on his victory, and Joshua says that he doesn't want to show them his weakness or collapse from fatigue in front of them, but he will make them all suffer because of what they did to him in his previous life. Aeneas goes to ask Joshua if he's okay, and Joshua looks at him and says that he has never seen this look on his father's face before like this. Joshua reassures him and tells him not to worry, and goes to take the Emperor's sword and announces the birth of the youngest mana user in the world. We then go to Duke Aeneas's meeting with his followers. Aeneas asks them about their reports. Knight Armstrong says that the soldiers belonging to his division returned from the reconnaissance campaign quickly. Count Anil is surprised and asks him why. Armstrong tells him that they received reports in the northern areas that the number of monsters increased abnormally, and that the knights couldn't deal with all these numbers. Worse than all this is the appearance of black goblins with the rest of the monsters. He says that these monsters are known to live in the depths of the black forests and are considered stronger than the monsters in the forest, and that they are known for their great strength to the degree that they can kill monsters very easily. And even B-level knights and 4th-level magicians can't deal with them easily. Everyone present is surprised and says that this news is shocking and that if these monsters attacked their cities, it would be a problem. Aeneas tells them not to worry and that he will go eliminate them himself. He tells Armstrong to give the second report. Armstrong tells him the report concerns the family of the 5th Duke Pontier. Aeneas is surprised and says that surely this report is related to the presence of Charlie and Kokas in their palace. He tells Armstrong to give him the report after the end of the meeting and asks them if they have other reports. Jeffon tells him yes, and that he has a report concerning his son Joshua. Everyone present says that they heard the news and that he surpassed his brother Babel and became the youngest sea-level knight in the continent, and that this is happy news for them. Jeffon says that Joshua was forgotten for a long time and no one was interested in him because he couldn't use mana, but how suddenly he became able to use mana and became strong to the degree that he became a sea-level knight, and that it's impossible for this to be natural talent. Count Anil says that he doesn't understand his meaning. Jeffon tells him that he thinks Joshua is using demonic energy and that it's impossible for him to become this strong in such a short period. Armstrong tells him to stop the delusions and that this is all because Joshua insulted him in front of everyone. Jeffon tells him no and asks him about the weapon that Joshua uses, and that everyone saw it, and that it's a weapon capable of changing its form and filled with magical energy, and that no one in history heard of a magical weapon in the form of a spear, and that when the Joker tried to attack Joshua with the last attack, he felt demonic energy from Joshua. Everyone present becomes worried and says that if he's really using demonic energy, it will be a problem and that the royal family will fight them. Count Anil tells the Duke that they must discover the truth as quickly as possible instead of taking risks. Jeffon says that they should send him to a remote area to make sure he has demonic power or not. Suddenly, Joshua enters the meeting room and everyone present is surprised. Joshua goes to Jeffon and mocks him because of his talk about demonic energy and asks him why he's so jealous of his strength. Why doesn't he try it himself? Jeffon is surprised by his words, and Joshua offers him again to duel him so he can be sure himself. Jeffon says that he's challenging him in front of the Duke because he knows that if he makes a mistake in front of him, the Duke will kill him, and if he loses to him, he will lose his position as well. Joshua asks him why he's thinking so much and that, as long as he's one of their best knights, he shouldn't hesitate. Jeffon gets angry and releases his mana and says that he feels insulted by his words. Joshua uses his mana and asks him how he intends to return the insult. The Duke stops them and tells Jeffon that he forgot something important and that there was one of the guests who could determine better than them. Armstrong tells him indeed and that the magician Evergrande from the magic tower was present with them, and if Joshua had really used demonic energy, he would have been able to notice it. The Duke tells them that they have thus resolved Jeffon's claim and asks them if anyone objects to his decision. They tell him no. Eganus tells Joshua that everyone's doubts about him still haven't ended and that everyone is wondering about this great increase in his strength, and even he is suspicious of him, and for them to actually prove whether this power belongs to him or not, he intends to take him with him to the dark forests. We continue the events with the council members asking Duke Aeginus if he's sure about what he wants to do, and that his own knights should be the ones to clear these forests, and that he shouldn't risk himself. Armstrong tells Aeginus that he'll send his strongest knights to get rid of the monsters in his place, and Aeginus tells them that he doesn't want them to worry about him and that he'll get rid of these monsters easily. He tells them that yes, he intends to send Joshua to the Royal Academy after they return and that he appreciates everyone's doubts about Joshua, but according to his family's laws, he must give him a chance at ruling as well. Jifon gets annoyed and says if this talented bastard enters the academy and comes back again, his power will be so great that no one will be able to touch him, and this way Babel will lose his position as heir to the family, and that he must find a way to destroy Joshua before this happens. Joshua tells Aeginus that he has a request, and he asks him what it is. He tells him that he wants to take his mother with him to the capital when he enters the academy. Jifon quickly gets up and tells him that this request is impossible, and that Lady Venetia will never allow him to take his mother with him to the capital. Joshua asks him what he means by Venetia not agreeing. Does he mean that Duke Aeginus needs to ask Venetia's permission first for his own decisions? Jifon is shocked and says that if he answers yes, it means he's saying that Venetia controls Duke Aeginus, and that the Duke might cut off his head right away, and that this bastard is using his intelligence against him. Jifon tells Aeginus that he was just worried that word would spread that he intends to take Lucia with him to the capital and leave the Duchess here in the castle. Aeginus tells him that he's not waiting for his suggestion and tells Joshua that he'll allow him to take his mother with him to the capital. Joshua thanks him, and Aeginus is happy with Joshua and says that he's very talented and that Babel can't reach his level. Aeginus then asks everyone present if anyone objects to his decisions, and they all tell him no. Aeginus tells them fine and that he'll return to his office. He tells Armstrong to bring him the soldiers who withdrew from the Black Forest, so he can interrogate them and also bring the report about the forest. He tells him okay. Aeginus tells Joshua to attend the meeting too, because he wants to talk with him. Joshua tells him okay. Suddenly, Babel arrives and tells them to wait. Aeginus asks Babel why he came to the meeting late, and Babel apologizes and tells him that he needed to think to himself a little. Aeginus is surprised and says that his son Babel has changed from before and that he's happy with him. Agenus asks Babel what he wants from him, and Babel tells him that he needs to talk with Joshua. Joshua asks him what he wants, and Jiphon gets angry and tells Joshua that Babel is higher than him in status and rank and he should speak to him with respect. Joshua asks him if he's Babel's official spokesperson. Jiphon tells him no. Joshua tells him then he's been talking for a long time, like he's Babel's personal nanny, and that he's supposed to be Duke Agenus's personal knight and shouldn't speak in defense of anyone but him. He tells him that all knights in the duchy should prove themselves through their skills, but he's the only one who reached this position without any effort and shouldn't talk about status. Jiphon tells him that he's wrong, and that he was just trying to teach him proper etiquette for speaking to his superiors. Joshua tells him that his superior is only through skill and that he doesn't respect anyone weaker than him, like him, for example. Jiphon gets very angry. Babel stops him and tells him that he's fine and doesn't need his defense and that Joshua's words are actually correct. The genius is surprised by Babel's words and says that he's no longer just an arrogant bastard like in the past. Babel tells Joshua that he intends to prove himself like he said and that he won't keep watching him surpass him. Joshua says that his eyes are different from before and that he's now truly a knight. Babel tells his father Agenus that he wants a request from him and that he wants him to remove him from his position as heir to the duchy. Everyone present is shocked and asks him how he can want to give up inheriting the duchy. The genius asks him if he lost confidence in himself after seeing his brother's monstrous power. Babel tells him no, and that he wants to follow the duchy's laws, and that he'll compete for the crown prince position fairly and honestly with Joshua. His father is surprised and tells him that he'll think about it. Agenus then leaves them and tells them the meeting is over. He's very happy and says that things are starting to change in the family, and that he's happy with his children. He then goes to Venetia, who hears news of what happened from Jiphon and is shocked that Babel gave up his heir position and that Joshua will also take his mother and go to the capital. Jiphon tells her that these are Duke Agenus's orders. She gets very angry and says that everything she did failed and that even her request to her uncle to get rid of Joshua failed too. Jiphon apologizes to her and tells her that he should have stopped Babel. She tells him that he couldn't do anything and that Babel is stubborn just like his father exactly. She then tells Jiphon that because of his failure so far, if Joshua manages to actually remain the family heir instead of her son Babel, she'll confess everything between them to Duke Agenus. Jiphon is terrified and tells her not to worry and that he'll prevent this from happening. She tells him okay and asks him what the Duke and Joshua are planning now. He tells her that Agenus will take Joshua and they'll go to Tosh 5 Castle. She's surprised and tells him why are they going to a castle near the Dark Forest. Jiphon tells her that the monsters in the forest got out of control and the Duke is going to get rid of them with Joshua. She tells him this means Joshua will go with his mother to the capital after he returns. Jiphon tells her yes. Venetia tells him since that's the case, before they leave, she wants him to invite Lucia to dinner with her and that it will be the last dinner for her. The preparations then begin for Duke Agenus's group to head to the forest, and also Prince Caesar's departure as he prepares to return to the capital again after Joshua's test ends. Joshua is walking around the place and looking at Don's ring that he received from his father. We go back in time to when Joshua was talking with his father, and Agenus tells him that they'll head to the Dark Forest tomorrow, but before they leave, he wants him to give up the Agenus family name. Joshua is surprised and asks him why. His father tells him that he can't explain to him, but he'll give him a gift as compensation. He tells him that he helped the Tower of Mages leader a long time ago, and he gave him a ring called Don's Magic Ring as a reward, and that this ring is a magical tool that the Tower leader made himself, and that it turns into a magic shield as soon as mana is pumped into it, and that he'll learn everything about it when he trains with it. Joshua tells him, but he knows that this ring is supposed to be for the crown heir. His father tells him exactly, and that he'll just lend him the ring instead of it being thrown in the treasure room. Joshua asks him about the reason for hiding his name. His father tells him that when the ring turns into a shield, it shows the royal family's emblem on it to hide his identity, and that he doesn't like any of his sons to carry anyone's emblem, other than his own family's emblem, so he'll hide his identity from everyone until they return. He tells him that as soon as they leave here, any stranger he meets, he'll introduce himself as an unknown count's heir in the east. Joshua says that the reason his father gave him this ring and at the same time asked him to hide his family identity is because he doesn't want any other family to control him, and that he's worried because of Prince Caesar's visit, and that he definitely came to explore his power at the Emperor's request. Agenus asks Joshua if he hates him because of his behavior toward him. Joshua says that he doesn't know and remembers his past. He says that he intended to take revenge on him once when the civil war started in the kingdom, but he died in battle before he could reach him, and that he neglected him and his mother in his life, and because of this, his mother suffered and died quickly. He says that because of his treatment of him in his previous life, He forgot that he was his father in the first place, so he forgot why he used to hate him. We return again to the present and Joshua says it doesn't matter, and that this talk was in the past, and that he'll use their current relationship with each other to become stronger. Suddenly, Caesar appears in front of Joshua and tells him that he sees him happy and asks him if something happened. He tells him that he knows he's going to the capital after he finishes his raid with his father on the Dark Forest, and that he'll wait for his visit to the capital as soon as he arrives and that he'll help him. Joshua asks him how he'll help him. Caesar tells him that royal family members have the right to nominate royal knights, and that he can get him into the Royal Knights Battalion without even taking the test, and that he can skip mandatory conscription in the Royal Army this way, and that he's sure of his talent and that he can become the Royal Knights commander easily, and then all these knights will remain under his control. He tells him to accept his offer if he's greedy for his talent. Joshua gets annoyed with him and says that he knows this hypocritical smile well, and that if it weren't for these knights behind him, he would have killed him in seconds. He says, but he can't do that now, and that he must actually enter the Royal Knights Battalion to become a commander in it, and then he'll be able to reach their secret warehouse, and that his loyal soldier is imprisoned in this warehouse. Joshua then tells Caesar that he appreciates his offer and that he'll think about it after they finish their attack on the Black Forest. Brown gets annoyed with Joshua's words and says that his rudeness is endless. Caesar tells Brown to calm down and that they should return now too. He tells him not to worry and that Joshua will remain his too. Joshua leaves him and walks away, saying that he won't remain his toy in this life, but he'll be his toy until he finishes his revenge. After that, Agenius moves with his battalion toward the Black Forest, accompanied by the Red Dawn Knights led by Givon, and only one wizard named Harmon who belongs to the Agenius family. Joshua then looks at his brother Babel with curiosity, saying that he has been watching all his actions since the moment he defeated him. The expedition then reaches Touch 5, where the castle's knight commander Robin welcomes Agenius. Agenius tells him it's been a long time since he saw him and apologizes for bringing him to this dangerous place after he decided to retire. Robin says no, and that he's lucky to still be serving him even after retirement. Suddenly, Count Big comes out with his daughter Anna and welcomes Agenius. This Big is a relative of Venetia. Agenius gets annoyed and says he should have gone straight to the Dark Forest. Big shouts at Robin for not immediately telling him that Duke Agenius had arrived, saying he's become stupid in his old age. Agenius cuts them off and tells Big that he's obviously gotten used to life in this place, and that every time he sees him, he's fatter than before. Big is shocked by his words, and says he only gets fat because the Duke's family takes care of him. Joshua is surprised, and says this person has no feelings or dignity at all. Big then welcomes Babel, saying it's been a long time since he saw him and that every time he sees him, he notices he's become stronger than before. He then asks who this child with them is. Givon tells him about Joshua, saying he's Duke Agenius's second son. Big is shocked, and says it's the first time he knows this, and that he didn't know his sister Venetia had given birth to a second child. Givon tells him that Joshua is not Venetia's son. Big is surprised and says it's Duke Agenius's right to marry again to spread his bloodline, asking who the noble pure-blooded woman is who is Joshua's mother. Givon tells him that his mother is not noble and is just a common servant. Big is surprised and says they should have told him this from the beginning, meaning he's just a common pig. Agenius ignores Big's words and tells them they've surely finished their introductions and they should move now. Big says he prepared a table for him and the knights and they should rest. Agenius tells him his knights are not weak and don't need rest, asking his soldiers if they need to rest. They say no, and he says good, they'll move now. Big stops them and says he wants to go with them. Agenius is surprised and asks why. Big says he's not an expert in battles like them, but it's not right for the area's count to sit quietly and let them fight for him, and that he'll join them with his soldiers to help them. Agenius says okay, but asks what he'll do about Anna. Surely he won't leave her alone in the castle. Big says not to worry, and that his daughter will help them. Agenius is surprised and asks how they'll take a young girl with them on a raid. Anna tells Agenius not to worry and uses her magical power, summoning the spirit of wind. Everyone is surprised. Big tells him they discovered some time ago that his daughter can control spirits, so she'll help them. Joshua says spirit magic is similar to natural magic, and that the number of spirit users is even less than magic users, and that their kingdom might have only 100 individuals who can use spirits. He says he never imagined he would see such a rare talent here. He then says he never heard of a spirit user named Anna in his previous life and wonders if Babel knows any information about her. Agenius tells them they should move now and that the Red Dawn soldiers will take the lead in the raid. Big says okay and thanks him. The genius's greed is activated again and he says he must add this spirit user to his family and not leave her to anyone else. Anna walks with Babel and Joshua watches them, saying he'll take advantage of her being busy with Babel and try to remember her, and he should have heard her name in his previous life. Big goes to Joshua and tells him he'll always watch him in this raid. We then go to the royal capital, where the Tower Master tells the Emperor about what happened in Joshua's test. He's very happy and says this boy is so impressive that he was able to deal with the Joker despite his great power. The Emperor asks for his opinion on Joshua as a wizard. He says he can't judge Joshua comfortably because the mana used by warriors and wizards is different, and a wizard like him can't evaluate him. The Emperor tells him to give a general assessment and that he wants to know if this boy has talent or not. He says he's talented enough to be a royal knight and that he might be similar to Knight Balmong. He says he has faced Knight Balmong many times and can resist him at full strength. The Emperor says, sure, Balmong exists but not to the degree that he can deal with the Tower Master. The wizard tells him he thinks Joshua can defeat Balmong and even him. The Emperor is surprised and asks if Joshua can defeat him. The wizard says not currently, but within 10 years, given Joshua's talent, he can easily defeat both him and Balmong. The Emperor laughs and then calls his assistant, Knight Jack, asking if there's any way they can bring the boy Joshua here to the castle, even for a short time. Jack tells him Prince Caesar is working on a plan to bring him currently. The Emperor is surprised. Jack says Prince Caesar nominated Joshua for the Royal Knights. The Emperor says this is indeed a solution, and that's why he created the nomination system for the Royal Knights, and that he was always annoyed that the 11th and 12th battalions of the Royal Knights don't have distinguished knights, and Joshua could solve this problem. The Emperor tells Jack to monitor the situation and watch his son Caesar and report what happens. He says yes. The Emperor keeps laughing and says he intends to use Joshua's great talent for his own benefit. It then shifts to Joshua facing a large number of monsters in the Black Forest, saying he's in trouble. We go back 2 hours before this moment when Joshua was with his father and the others preparing their plan. Count Big comes and asks Agenius what he's doing and why he made their camp in front of the forest, saying they could be exposed to monster attacks. Robin says Count Big is stupid and doesn't know anything about the area, and only came to gain Agenius's loyalty. Agenius asks Big how he doesn't know and that he can understand when he looks at the forest in front of them. Big says he doesn't see anything different. Agenius tells him the monsters go into rage mode at night, especially during the Crimson Moon period, and they always attack villagers at this time. Night is about to fall on them and today is a red moon night, so they must avoid entering the forest at this time. Big says he finally understands. Agenius tells him since he understands, he'll help the others set up camp, and tells Babel and Joshua to help too. They say okay. Joshua goes to collect firewood with the knights. One of them says they've collected a lot and should return. He tells them he'll still collect more and tells them to go back and he'll catch up. They say okay and leave. Joshua takes advantage of the opportunity, summons the Lucia spear, and heads toward the forest. Big is watching him and asks what he's going to do. Joshua, who is inside the forest, says his goal is the primordial stone. This stone is a very powerful magical stone, and according to rumors he heard, each magical element has its own primordial stone, but before he died, they could only find 5 of these stones. These stones still haven't been discovered by anyone at the present time. He says these stones can boost a wizard's power from 1 magical circle to 3 circles in moments, so all wizards and knights search for them. According to what he remembers, they discovered one of these stones in the dark forest in his previous life. Joshua keeps walking in the forest, saying he can use this stone to control his and Lucia's power from raging. He then says he's been walking for an hour now, but hasn't reached the middle of the forest. Suddenly, he finds a huge vibration in the place and one of the orcs appears walking. Joshua says this orc will block his path to the middle of the forest. He says the orc's power destroys weak magic, and he must be a B-level knight to get rid of it. But if he can use all his strength and attack it through a trap, he'll defeat it quickly. Joshua goes to attack it, saying he'll sneak and cut its neck quickly. But suddenly, this orc starts screaming and unleashing its power. Joshua is surprised and asks where all this power is coming from and that he must finish it quickly. But suddenly, he finds the orc appearing in front of him, attacking with all its strength. Joshua is shocked and says he must dodge it or he'll die. Joshua quickly dodges the orc's destructive attack, escapes from the place, and says he was wrong and shouldn't fight a powerful monster like this in rage mode because of the Crimson Moon, or he'll die. He quickly hides behind a tree, saying he'll erase his existence until the orc passes by him and attacks. He says he'll use his old friend, the King of Assassins technique, and he doesn't know if it works on his current body or not, but he'll try. He starts pumping mana from his body around him to hide his presence. This orc appears beside him but can't see him. Joshua says his trick worked and goes to attack the orc, saying his body started suffering because he hasn't used this technique for a long time. But suddenly, one of the branches he's jumping on breaks and Joshua falls to the ground, saying he was careless. He's shocked when he finds a group of monsters noticed him and appear in front of him to attack. Joshua says he's in trouble, but must use his secret skill. He uses his spear technique and attacks them with the violent storm, finishing them off. Joshua's attack hits all the monsters that were attacking him. Joshua gets tired afterward and says the technique drained all his strength, and he thought he had reached the second level in the magical spear art, but the problem is his body. He's still weak and unable to withstand these great powers. He says he can't continue resting here, and according to these monsters' movement pattern, they're heading toward their camp, and the time isn't right for rest. He must find the primordial stone and quickly return to camp. We return to the camp and see a group of soldiers on guard duty, but suddenly, goblins appear out of nowhere and attack them. A soldier alerts all the knights and tells them they're under attack. All the knights come out and start fighting the goblins and monsters that appeared. A group of monsters appears from the other side of the camp and prepares to attack them once they get distracted. Babel keeps killing all the goblins that appear in front of him, and Knight Jack shows up and quickly kills all the monsters that were attacking Babel. Babel is surprised and wonders who this knight belongs to and that he's very strong and definitely above sea level. Suddenly, the group of monsters that was hiding behind the camp appears and prepares to attack them. All the knights present are shocked and say their numbers are in the thousands, and that they should retreat. Giffon appears behind them and tells them he'll execute anyone who retreats and tells them to organize their ranks and prepare to attack the goblin. They actually organize their ranks and go attack the goblins and other monsters. Babel and Jack take care of eliminating the monsters that attack them at the front. Giffon attacks the goblins with his special attack and kills a large number of them, but is surprised by even larger numbers appearing. Giffon says their numbers are endless, and that they thought the Red Moon's effect would start tomorrow. Suddenly, a giant orc appears in front of Giffon and attacks one of the soldiers. Giffon is surprised and says the timing is really bad, and that no one can handle it except him because he's the only one classified as a B-level knight. He goes to attack the orc and says he'll eliminate it with just one strike, but the orc attacks him and throws him far away. Everyone present is surprised, and when the knights see Giffon defeated, they start running away quickly from this orc so it won't kill them. Giffon is shocked and says how did this orc block his attack and attack him and defeat him, wondering if this is the Red Moon's effect on them. Suddenly, Agnes appears and tells him that knights shouldn't lose focus in battle and tells him that he's the one who will eliminate the orc and these monsters. Agnes goes and stands in front of the monsters and they rush to attack him quickly. Agnes laughs and tells them they're very weak, draws his sword and attacks them with just one strike. With one swing, he manages to eliminate thousands of monsters in front of him. The remaining monsters are shocked and terrified of him. Giffon says that with just one attack he eliminated a large number of them and that this is expected from Duke Aeginus, one of the 9 stars of the continent. We then go to Joshua, who has defeated the largest number of goblins until he reached the middle of the forest, and finds the primitive stone known as Bronto. We return again to the battle where Aeginus is waiting for the second attack from the monsters. Big tells Babel that this is his father Aeginus's power, and that he definitely inherited this power from him and can use it in the future. He says Babel must be terrified by this massive power, and that it's the first time he's seen something like it. So he understands his feelings, but says he forgot something important. Big quickly goes to Giffon and asks him where the boy named Joshua is and that he hasn't seen him at all. Giffon tells him he doesn't know and that he hasn't seen Joshua since the beginning of the battle. Big says he definitely ran away to stay alive and that this is expected from just a lowly commoner. The other knights agree and say he definitely ran away, and that they haven't seen him since the start of the battle and that he's disgracing the Duke's family like this. Aeginus uses his power and shouts at them asking what they're doing, and that the battle still isn't over. They're surprised and tell him, "Yes, sir." Babel then goes with the other knights and they keep hunting the goblins that attack them. The goblins keep running away from them toward the forest, and the knights keep laughing at them, saying they're very cowardly monsters and that they'll teach them a lesson they won't forget. But suddenly, a big explosion happens in the forest. Someone kills these goblin monsters and the knights are surprised and wonder what's happening. But suddenly, a group of orcs appears from inside the forest, goes to attack the knights and keeps killing them. The goblins and other monsters, once they see this, return as well and go attack the knights. Giffon is shocked and says how is this happening, and that he thought they finished killing all the monsters, but wasn't expecting a whole group of orcs to appear. But suddenly, he senses a strange power in the place and says there's lightning starting to appear. Joshua appears and goes to one of the orcs and uses his lightning attack. attacking it with a very strong lightning strike and eliminates it. Everyone present is shocked by what happened and asks what he did. Gifon says impossible, and that he eliminated a very strong orc with just one strike, and that Joshua is supposed to be a sea-level knight. So how did he do it? Big tells Joshua that what he did is cheating and that he's definitely using some trick, and that he's just a bug that appeared after the fighting ended, so it's impossible for him to take the hero role. He says this attack definitely belonged to the Duke and he was just helping him. Big's knights agree and say it's impossible for a sea-level knight like Joshua to eliminate a strong orc like this with just one attack, when Gifon himself couldn't defeat it, even though he's a B-level knight. Joshua says he's fed up with their talk, and so he'll show them his real power, and that he's sure after this attack he'll pass out, but it doesn't matter, and that he'll depend on his father to save him. Joshua goes to the knights who are fighting a group of orcs and tells them to back off so they won't get hurt by his attack. Joshua starts summoning his lightning and says he absorbed part of the Bronto Stone's power, but doesn't know if his body can handle all this power or not. He jumps over the orc monsters quickly and uses the lightning storm skill, attacking them with it and eliminating 2 orcs easily. Everyone present is shocked, and Big says impossible, and that Joshua really eliminated them. The soldiers are shocked and ask how Joshua eliminated them, and that orc skin is supposed to be very thick to the point that it doesn't even get injured from a B-level knight's attack. So, how did Joshua, who's a C-level knight, defeat them with just one attack? They say it's also the first time they've seen a knight able to shape his mana and produce lightning magic from it, and that they're sure Joshua is a magic swordsman. Aeginus watches Joshua and says he's maintaining consciousness with great difficulty and that he definitely doesn't want to show any weakness in front of them. Harmon goes to Aeginus and tells him he knows why he's now placing big hopes on Joshua. Aeginus asks him about Joshua and Harmon tells him he can't classify him among knights because he's not a knight, but can classify him among mages, and that Joshua will equal those with 3 magic circles, and that his son is a real monster capable of shaking their continent when he grows up, and that he can achieve the duchy's dream. Aeginus quickly leaves him and runs toward Joshua. Joshua says he reached his limits after this attack and collapses on the ground. One of the orcs appears and tries to attack him, but Aeginus appears and quickly eliminates this monster and protects Joshua. Joshua laughs and says everything went according to his plan and passes out. Joshua then wakes up and finds himself in the duchy, which is destroyed. He says what's happening and that he doesn't understand anything and whether this is just a dream or what. He then sees his brother Babel coming out of their castle, and Joshua is shocked and says this is how the duchy looked after it was destroyed in his previous life. He wonders if this is some kind of special dream, but is shocked and says no, it's definitely a prophecy because of the Bronto Stone, and that this stone is so powerful that it can reveal glimpses of the future. Suddenly strong winds appear and attack Babel. Joshua is surprised and asks what's happening. The girl Anna appears in front of Babel, and she's the one who attacked him. Joshua is shocked and says what's happening and that this girl is Anna Belgris, and she has a very strong wind spirit with her. He says he doesn't remember anything about a girl named Anna from the future, but he remembers this wind spirit, Selon, well. He wonders if something happened between the duchy and Anna to start the conflict between them. He says that's right, as long as Anna is here, her teacher will definitely be here too. Babel keeps talking with Anna, but Joshua can't hear anything from them and says Anna is definitely using silence magic so no one can hear anything from them. Suddenly, a person appears next to Anna, and Joshua quickly goes toward them to hear anything of what's happening. Babel tells Anna and the person who appeared that it's impossible for him to surrender and impossible for the duchy to fall into their hands. This person orders the wind spirit to attack Babel, and indeed the wind spirit attacks him and injures him greatly. This person laughs at him and tells him that he and the duchy are weaker than some. Joshua is shocked when he sees him and says this is Drax Belgris. Joshua quickly wakes up from the dream and is shocked, saying this wasn't just an ordinary dream, and that he's sure this dream is either glimpses from his past or glimpses from the future. He says it doesn't matter and wonders how many hours have passed since he was injured. Joshua tries to get up, but his body starts hurting, and Joshua says his body still can't handle his great power. He says he now reached the 2nd level in the magical spear technique and surpassed the power of a sea-level knight, and that this happened very quickly, thanks to the Bronto Stone, and that it helped him eliminate the monsters and also see glimpses of the future. He says once his body heals, he wants to know more about the primitive stones and also the locations of the rest. But suddenly he's shocked by his father Aegines's presence next to him, who tells him the moon is very beautiful today. He tells him that just a few hours ago, the red moon was very terrifying for anyone who saw it. But now if he looks at it, it's very beautiful when it returned to its normal nature. Joshua tells him sure. Aegenes tells him that once they return to the duchy, they'll move to the capital. He tells him his decision to hide his identity will continue there too, and that he wants to go to the capital and join the academy as if he's not his son, but the son of one of the counts from the east. and that he'll play the role of just a noble boy who wants to revive his count's land again. Joshua tells him okay and says he should listen to him now and that it's actually better for him not to be under many people's eyes there, and that he should focus only on increasing his power to return to his old power again. Aeginus tells Joshua that when he was sleeping, he was saying a very strange name and asks him where he learned the name of the cursed Drax Belgris. Joshua is surprised and doesn't answer Aeginus, who tells him it doesn't matter now, and that he needs to rest first and that they'll talk once they return to the duchy tomorrow. We then go to Big, who is talking with Giffon and asking him if his sister knows anything about Joshua. Giffon tells him that she knows, and Beige is surprised and asks him how his sister is staying quiet about him, and that this boy is a danger to Babel's ruling position. Giffon tells him that she wasn't interested in him until now because he was very weak and worked in the stables, and that they didn't know he had this terrifying amount of power. Beige tells him it's impossible for him to awaken this massive amount of power in such a short time, and that even the continent's genius Lord Babel didn't do it. He tells him that Babel, despite his genius and strength, received support and help from everyone in the duchy. Even Aeginus himself was training him. So, how did a neglected child like Joshua become stronger than him? And that it's impossible for Joshua to be a sea-level knight, and that they all saw him defeat the huge orc easily, and that he also used magic. Giffon tells him exactly, and that it's impossible for sea-level knights to defeat the orc. But if he's a magic knight like they're saying, this would be easy for him. He says it's impossible, Joshua is a magic knight, and that he thinks there's another force controlling him. Giffon is surprised, and Beige tells him that he believes because of the massive powers that appeared in Joshua in a short time, he definitely made a contract with a very powerful demon. Giffon tells him no, and that Joshua revealed his power in front of Aeginus, and in front of all the wizards loyal to the Emperor, and none of them discovered any demonic powers in him. Beige tells him to focus with him, and that he's not interested whether he made a contract with a demon or not, but he wants him to execute the plan based on him having made a contract with a demon. Giffon laughs and tells him that he understood his plan. Beige tells him that he's strong, but still a child, and that he wanted to show off his power in front of them, and that they'll use this power against him to accuse him of using demon power and get rid of him. Giffon asks him how he plans to do this, and Beige tells him that he'll just watch him for now and then they'll act, and that his daughter Anna will go with Joshua to the Royal Academy, and that he'll have her watch him there. Giffon tells him okay, and Beige tells him he'll also be able to find a plan to get rid of him, because if Joshua becomes stronger, the Crown Prince position will go away from Babel. Giffon tells him not to worry and that he'll also prepare his own plan. Then we go to Aeginus's hall and see Cheryl, who is very sad. And suddenly, Kokas arrives and tells her there's urgent news and that Lord Joshua is about to reach the castle with Aeginus after they finish the forest raid. Cheryl asks him what he wants her to do with this information, and Kokas is surprised and tells her he thought she'd be happy. Cheryl is surprised and asks him why he's interested in Joshua, and that he used to hate him. Kokas tells her that he was just an illegitimate child, but he's now the youngest knight who can use mana on the continent, and that Duke Pontier's family has great wealth but can't buy a knight like this, so they need to get him to their ranks through other means. Cheryl asks him what kind of means, and he asks her if she forgot why her father sent her here. She tells him that he sent her to connect with Babel, so they could help them solve the Mercenary King problem. Kokas tells her exactly, and that the Mercenary King allied with the Cromwell family. Kokas tells her that this Mercenary King is a very strong commoner who managed to become a sword master even though he uses an axe, and that he's one of the 12 superhuman candidates for a position in the 9 stars. He tells her that their spies said that Marquis Cromwell allied with this Mercenary King and uses his wealth to support him, and that this Marquis wants to use him to steal their wealth in the Avalon region, and that if war breaks out between the two families, their family will be greatly harmed. Cheryl tells him, but they won't be able to deal with or defeat this Mercenary King. Kokas tells her that the two families can't allow either family to control the Avalon region, and that normally they were in conflict for a long time, but it was a silent conflict. But now with the Mercenary King joining Marquis Cromwell, they're in crisis and the situation has turned into real war. Cheryl tells him that they can't buy the Mercenary King with money, which is why her father sent her here. Kokas tells her exactly, and that's why her father sent her here to connect with Babel, and then they'll get help from Duke Aeginus, and he'll be able to eliminate the Mercenary King easily. Cheryl tells him that she really loves strong people but she doesn't want to deal with Babel. Kokas is surprised by her behavior and says she's always enthusiastic, but this time she's discouraged. Cheryl asks him, why don't they ask for help from Aeginus directly without her connecting? Kokas tells her it won't work, and that her father's pride prevents him from asking for help from Aeginus without relations between the families. Cheryl tells him that her father is stupid. Kokus tells her that if he were in his place, he'd put his family's safety above his dignity and ask for help from Agnes. He tells Cheryl that he knows well that she's not interested in Lord Babel, and that's why he doesn't want her to become a sacrifice for their family, and that he knows another way. She asks him what, and he tells her that he knows she loves Lord Joshua, and that despite her acting arrogant with him, she's impressed by him, and that she can connect with him and their plan will work as it is. Cheryl is surprised and starts crying, and Kokus asks her if his conclusion was wrong. She tells him no, and that she'll talk to Joshua before he goes to the capital. Kokus is happy and tells her he'll go prepare an opportunity for them to talk together. Cheryl becomes very happy and asks how Joshua will deal with her. Then a big party starts in the Duchy Palace in honor of Joshua, who defeated the orc in the forest. Jack is walking with Joshua and says everyone is talking about his master's power. Joshua tells him to stop calling him master so he doesn't get himself in trouble. Jack tells him no, and that he's really his master, and that he decided to become his personal knight after the end of the raid, and that he proved his strength to everyone. Joshua laughs and tells him that he didn't ask for his opinion on the matter in the first place, but okay. He then tells him to go back to the party and that he's tired and wants to go rest. Jack tells him okay and leaves him and walks away, telling him to call on him anytime he needs him. Joshua gets annoyed and says that he refused a large number of knights in his previous life because he decided to leave Emperor Caesar because he was his close friend. But in the end he was betrayed by him. He remembers his father's words about Drax Belgris and says he needs to think about many things before he continues on his path. Suddenly, he reaches an old man who asks Joshua if he's okay. Joshua tells him yes and asks him what he needs. This old man tells him that there's a table prepared for him and that they're waiting for him to come. Joshua tells him, but he told them he's tired and will go rest. He tells him this isn't a request and that he won't go to the knight's table. But Lady Vanessa asked him to come to her private table and that his mother Lucia also came at her request. Joshua is surprised, and we know that Vanessa is preparing for something. Joshua actually goes to attend dinner and finds Vanessa and his mother Lucia present. His mother, Lucia, is happy as soon as she sees him, and Vanessa welcomes Joshua and tells him it's the first time they've met. Joshua ignores her, and Giffen tells Joshua to show respect to Duchess Vanessa. Joshua looks at him with great anger, and Giffen gets scared and says why is he looking at him like this. Lucia tells Joshua to show his respect to the Duchess, and Joshua listens to her and introduces himself to Vanessa as Joshua Agenus. Vanessa gets angry as soon as she hears that he's now using the Aegeni's name and says it doesn't matter and that she'll tolerate him today, and that this is the last time she'll see him. Vanessa tells Joshua that she heard he's traveling tomorrow to the Royal Academy, so she made a special dinner for him and that she wanted to get to know him and his mother. Lucia is surprised and asks her why her son will go to the Royal Academy. Vanessa is surprised that she still doesn't know. Giffen tells her that Joshua is now a sea-level knight and that he'll go to the academy to study. As soon as Lucia hears this, she becomes very happy and tells Joshua that she's proud of him. Vanessa tells Lucia that she prepared dinner to celebrate Joshua and also apologized to her for neglecting her and her son all the time that passed, and that if she's upset with her about anything, she can tell her. Lucia tells her no and that she's grateful to her. Vanessa tells her since that's the case, they'll start dinner. The servants enter and put food in front of them. Joshua looks at the food placed in front of them and laughs, saying he understands. Vanessa tells Joshua to sit and eat with Lucia, and that this dinner is made specially for them. She asks Lucia if this fancy dinner bothers her. Lucia tells her no, and she tells her good, and that she made it so they could get closer to each other. Lucia thanks her for caring about them. Vanessa tells her to start eating and enjoy the food. Indeed, Lucia is about to eat, and Vanessa is very happy. But Joshua stops his mother and tells her that he wants to apologize first to Lady Vanessa and thank her for taking care of them. Vanessa tells him it doesn't matter and that he should eat first before the food gets cold. Joshua tells her unfortunately they can't accept this kindness of hers. Lucia is surprised and asks Joshua what he's doing. Joshua tells her that the Duchess has done a lot for them and brought them all kinds of food, but she's not eating with them. Lucia is surprised and says that's true. Joshua tells Vanessa, since this is their last meal before he leaves, he wants her to eat with them. Joshua says he's been exposed to thousands of assassination attempts in his life, and one of the most famous things they tried to assassinate him with is poisoning attempts, and that they definitely put strong poison in this food that at the same time has no trace, so no one can identify them. Joshua asks Vanessa why she doesn't want to eat with them. She tells him she's trying to maintain her weight lately, and that this dinner is made for them. Joshua tells her she doesn't need to maintain her weight, and that she's beautiful as she is, and that she should eat with them. She thanks him and tells him no. She's surprised and wonders if he discovered the poison in their food, which is why he wants her to eat with them, and that he's a cunning child hiding his strength and intelligence, and that he definitely suspects her because she's not eating with them. Joshua asks her why she's thinking so much before answering. or is she really poisoning the food? Gifon yells at Joshua and tells him how he accuses the Duchess of such a horrible accusation, and that it's impossible for her to do something like this, and that he should speak to his superiors with respect. Joshua gets angry at him and tells him to know his place as long as he's talking about respect, and that he's just a knight they have and is talking to the Duke's son. Gifon gets scared and says that every time he talks to him, he releases very great bloodlust. And how does a child who's still a knight have all this bloodlust? Joshua asks Vanessa for her opinion on his words, and that he was joking with her at first, but according to Gifon's reaction, he's sure she actually put poison in the food. Vanessa gets angry and curses him. Gifon draws a sword and tells him that because of his insult to a member of the royal family, he'll execute him immediately, even if he's the Duke's son. Joshua uses his power and brings out his spear and asks him how he dares to draw his sword in front of him, and that he didn't just poison their food but also drew his sword in front of him, and that he'll cut off his head. Gifon feels the great power coming from Joshua and says it's impossible, this is the power of a C-level knight, and that he's sure he reached B-level, and that his weapon is a very powerful legendary weapon. He says there's no other solution since he drew his sword in front of him, and that he must get rid of him and let Vanessa protect him because this boy will become a problem if he becomes stronger than this. Suddenly, the Duke appears and stops them, asking them what they're doing. After that we go to Prince Caesar, who is in the royal palace, and the commander of the wizard's tower arrives and tells him that he's bringing him a message from Duke Aeginus's house. Caesar gets happy and says that surely Joshua has made his decision and it's over, and wonders if he accepted the offer to join the royal knights. The wizard tells him he'll definitely accept since the royal knights are every knight's dream in the country to join them. Caesar reads the letter and gets shocked, then starts laughing hysterically. The wizard asks him what's wrong, and Caesar tears up the letter and tells him that Joshua turned out to be more impressive than expected. We go back again to the battle between Joshua and Gifon, and Aeginus arrives asking them what they're doing. Gifon gets shocked and wonders how long he's been here. Aeginus yells at him, asking what he's doing. Venetia intervenes and tells him that she sent the dinner invitation to Lucia and the boy Joshua because she heard they were going with him to the capital, so she wanted to have one last meal with them. Aeginus looks at Joshua and the food in front of him and understands the situation, then looks at Gifon and asks him how long he's going to keep his sword drawn in front of him. He apologizes and quickly sheathes his sword, and Joshua also pulls back his spear. Aeginus tells Joshua that they'll be moving early tomorrow, so he wants to go sleep and get ready. Joshua says okay and takes his mother, Lucia, with him, and they leave. Venetia asks Aeginus why he's treating Joshua differently than before, and if he got attached to him after neglecting him. Aeginus asks Venetia if she hates him, and she says yes. He asks her what she hates about him, and she tells him he knows very well why she hates him. He tells her she surely hates him because of his sudden interest in Joshua. Venetia tells him he shouldn't show his interest in a lowly commoner child like this in front of her, and that he's insulting her this way. She says she knows well that he wasn't interested in her from the beginning, but he was interested in relations with her royal family. She tells him she knows she has no right to complain about why she hates him because he married her based on a political marriage, not love for her, and she stayed quiet about her rights, but she won't stay quiet about Babel's rights. If her son Babel loses his position or value in front of everyone because of this child, she won't stay quiet. She tells him he's supposed to be the head of a family from the 5 strongest families in the kingdom, and should know noble etiquette in dealing with others, and that his son Babel is noble, unlike Joshua, the commoner. Aeginus laughs and asks her if someone who knows anything about noble etiquette would do something as disgusting as what she's doing. She gets surprised and asks what he's talking about. Aeginus gets angry and asks if she thinks he's ignorant and doesn't know what the two of them are doing. Venetia and Gifon get shocked and say he definitely knows everything. After that, we go to Joshua, who returns to his room and says his mother was very sad when he took her back to her room and she was surprised by what happened. He says that in this life and his previous life, he was always making her worry about him. Then Knight Jack arrives and asks Joshua how his meal with Venetia went. Joshua asks him how he knew, and Jack tells him he came looking for him in his room and didn't find him, so he asked the head servant and learned from him that he was with Venetia. Joshua gets surprised and says that the head servant was also involved in this operation, and that Venetia got many people involved in this assassination attempt, and he'll punish them properly at the right time. Jack tells Joshua that he heard he's traveling to the academy tomorrow, and that this is good for him because the academy will allow him to become stronger than before and will also protect him from danger, and as long as Duke Aeginus is with him, he can learn from him. Joshua asks if he came just to tell him this, and Jack says no and bows in front of him. He tells him that he asked him before the party, but he's confirming his request again, and he wants to become his personal master and let him serve him. Joshua gets confused about what to do with him and asks if he knows the amount of troubles he'll see because of him, and that if he wants to be a real knight, his place isn't with him because his path is full of blood and revenge and isn't suitable for knights. He asks if he really wants to serve him, and Jack says he's sure and will walk any path with him even if it's a path full of blood. Joshua says okay and agrees that he becomes his personal swordsman servant. The next morning, Aegonus and Joshua leave the palace, and Aegonus asks Joshua if he's sure about what he's doing, and that even if he's playing the role of a poor count's son, he should have more servants than this, and he's only taking one knight with him. Joshua tells him he likes to rely on himself and has lived his whole life alone, and one night will be enough for him. Aegonus says okay, and suddenly Cheryl appears in front of their convoy and stops them. Aegonus is surprised, and Cheryl apologizes for stopping them, but she wanted to say goodbye to them first before they left. Aegonus apologizes to her for not talking to her during her stay at the palace, and also for not being able to talk to her at Etheline and Count Rebecca's farewell party, and that he thought she was sick. She tells him she's fine now. Aegonus gets surprised and asks why she's acting like refined ladies again, and that he liked her first style because he's used to raising boys. She tells him that as long as he wants it that way, she'll talk in her normal way with him. Aegonus laughs and tells her this is the Cheryl he knows, and asks if she'll go with them to the capital since he left her because her father is there. She says no, and that she wants to visit Count Kokas's family first. Kokas tells her she doesn't need to visit his family, and she tells him she promised his wife she'd meet her. Then Cheryl goes to Joshua and tells him she wants to tell him something important. Joshua gets surprised and says, "What does this crazy girl want from him now?" She tells him she wants to give him something important and takes out her family crest and gives it to Joshua, telling him to visit her family's headquarters when he reaches the capital. Kokas gets shocked and tells Cheryl she shouldn't be this direct. Joshua asks Cheryl why she's giving him this badge, and Cheryl tells him it's an invitation, and she wants him to visit them as soon as he arrives. The knights behind Joshua are surprised by her behavior and say she's definitely interested in Joshua. Another one tells them no, she's definitely interested in Lord Babel, and they tell him she's not connected to Lord Babel and what she just did is considered a love confession to Joshua. Joshua says he won't be able to refuse her in front of everyone, and this will hurt her, and many rumors will start spreading because of them, and he wants to not be the center of attention until he recovers his full strength. Cheryl starts acting in front of Joshua, crying and asking if he intends to humiliate her in front of everyone and won't take the crest from her, and that she just wanted to apologize to him for her past behavior with him. Joshua gets shocked and says she's insistent, takes the crest from her and tells her he'll visit her when he's free, then leaves her and walks away. She becomes very happy, and Aegonus asks Cheryl if he can also visit them. She tells him of course, and he says okay, and that he'll visit them with Joshua because he needs to talk to her father. They leave her and walk away, and Aegonus looks at Joshua and is happy, telling him he's still a child and doesn't know what it means for a noble girl to give him her family crest. After that, we go to the royal capital, where one of the knights informs the emperor that Duke Aegonus and his son Joshua started their journey and will arrive at the capital within 3 days. He tells him that Prince Caesar's request for Joshua to accept his nomination for the royal knights was rejected by Joshua. The emperor gets surprised and asks why he refused to join the strongest knights in the whole world. He says Joshua is the second son of the Light family and also a concubine's son, so his chance at ruling is 0. So does he have a plan to turn things in his favor and rule the duchy, or what exactly is he thinking? The knight tells him he believes Joshua is planning something else. The emperor asks him what, and he tells him Joshua said in his rejection letter to Caesar that he doesn't want anyone from the royal family to nominate him, and that he'll enter the royal knights by his own effort. The emperor keeps laughing and tells him he's either crazy or very strong, and he wants to know which one he is. 4 days pass and Joshua arrives with his father at the royal capital at Duke Aegonus's private palace. Lucia is very happy and asks Joshua if they're really going to stay in a place like this. Joshua tells her definitely, and Jack tells Joshua this place hasn't changed since his childhood and that he was always with Duke Aegonus in this place. Joshua is surprised that he was close to his father when he was young to the point that he would bring him with him to the capital, and that he also never heard of a knight named Jack in his previous life. He says it's possible that he failed in his previous life to become a knight, or even something happened to him, unlike this life. Jack tells Joshua that this place doesn't have many servants or knights, and that they can train here however they want. Joshua tells him that's right. Lucia calls Joshua and tells him she wants to tour the castle. Joshua tells her okay and says this castle is very dangerous, and that no one protects this castle except him and Jack, and that even the servants are few in number, and that his mother chose them herself. They then go in to tour the castle. Joshua says protecting his mother if they were ambushed would become very difficult in a place like this, and that he also won't be able to stay by her side all the time because of the academy. and that he needs to find a solution. Joshua tells Jack that he's going on an errand now and will come back again. Jack asks him if he's going with him and that he definitely doesn't know the way around the capital. Joshua tells him not to worry and that he'll figure it out, and tells him the most important thing is to protect his mother until he returns. Jack tells him okay. Joshua then goes to a neighborhood in the capital and says this place hasn't changed from his previous life. He wonders how the people in this organization will deal with him in his current form. Suddenly, someone appears behind Joshua and tells him he's definitely lost to come to a place like this. Joshua says he's ready to find the red coin in the Rolf River. This person is shocked and tells Joshua to follow him. Joshua says he came to the right place and that he needs to gather a lot of information, and that this organization is the best organization he can get information from. Joshua then arrives with this person at a tavern, and everyone present is wondering what Joshua is doing in this place. This person tells him to follow him and opens a secret door in the place, then opens a door in the ground. Joshua says they're a very organized group and that he won't worry about information leaking in this place. They then go underground. This person tells him to be careful because this place is very dark. They then pass by one of the guards who stops to greet them quickly. Joshua says this person's position is higher than he imagined and that everyone in this place respects him. They then reach another secret room. This man tells him to relax and that he'll learn the information he needs from the person on the other side. Joshua is surprised. This person asks him what kind of information he wants to know. Joshua laughs and says he didn't imagine that the organization's director himself would come with him to give him information. This person is shocked and tells him he knows a lot about them. But how did he know he's the director of this place? Joshua tells him that intelligence organizations are based on secrecy even among members, and that no one knows the other except in very few circumstances only, even informants don't know each other. He tells him that most new members in the organization won't know him, but old members like the guard and the tavern owner recognized him immediately and showed him respect as soon as they saw him, and that's when he knew he was the director. The director tells him he thought the rumors about him were just lies, but he turned out to be truly brilliant. He tells him he's honored to meet the second son of Duke Janus, Lord Joshua. Joshua asks him how he knew. The director tells him he would definitely know him, and that he's the person the whole kingdom is talking about most. Joshua is surprised that he knows his identity even with his father, Janus's measures to hide him, and that the intelligence level in this organization is very strong, and that he should worry about his identity spreading outside. The director tells Joshua he knows what he's thinking and that he wants to reassure him, and that no one can know his identity because only he and a few of his followers know this information. He introduces himself as Zero, the director of the Moon Gate organization in the royal capital. Joshua asks him what kind of information he'll give him. First level information. Joshua asks him if he'll give important information like this to someone he just met. Zero tells him of course, and that he wants to build relations with him. Joshua says nothing is free, and that he'll definitely ask him for something in exchange for this information. Joshua tells Zero he wants level 0 information. Zero is shocked and asks him how he knew about this level. Joshua tells him he knows a lot about them. Zero asks him what kind of information he wants. Joshua tells him he wants to know about the destroyed Fizz family's possessions. Zero tells him most of the family's inheritance is in the black market, and that it'll take time until they find it. Joshua asks him how long, and he tells him about a week. He asks him if he needs anything else. Joshua says he'll be in danger if anyone knew he's looking for this family's property, and also if anyone knew his real strength. He says he'll set a trap for them so he can kill 2 birds with 1 stone. Joshua tells him he'll give the person who finds the red coin the Moon Gate emblem. Zero is shocked and asks him where he knows this information from, and that this is a legend passed down in their organization. Joshua tells him if he accepts his offer and conditions, he'll bring him the Moon Gate emblem within 3 years. Zero says they no longer need this emblem in the organization's succession war because it ended exactly a year ago, but this emblem is still very important to their organization, and they've been looking for it for a long time. Zero asks Joshua what his conditions are first. Joshua tells him the first condition is natural, 2-1 knows anything about his identity. The second condition is he wants him to gather everything known about Drax Bal Grace. Zero is shocked and asks him why he's looking for information about the warlord. Joshua tells him he needs this information and asks him if he's going to cooperate with him and accept his offer. Zero tells him okay. 2 months then pass since Joshua's arrival in the capital. Joshua continues training with Jack all day to regain his old strength, and he was also planning to move Lucia from his castle and send her to the second castle on the capital's borders, because it was a much better place than here with more guards who could protect his mother, unlike this castle. At first, Lucia refused to leave her son Joshua and go, but she finally agreed after Joshua's insistence and traveled to the second castle on the capital's borders. Joshua finally relaxed and felt reassured about her. Time then passes, and there's only 1 week left before Joshua enters the academy. Joshua is worried and tense. Jack asks him what's wrong, and that he's been acting strange for a while. Joshua tells him he's fine and says Zero told him he'd gather this information within a week. But 2 months have passed, and he hasn't heard a word from him since then, and that he needs this information before entering the academy because it'll affect his plans. Suddenly, Zero arrives at Joshua's place and tells him it's been a long time since he saw him. Joshua is surprised and tells him he's late. Zero tells him there were many problems in gathering the information. He looks at Jack, who is very annoyed with him. Joshua tells Jack to calm down and that this Zero is someone he knows. Joshua asks Zero if he brought the information or not. He tells him of course and gives him the information, saying the items he's looking for were bought by many people, so it was difficult for them to track them, but they gathered their locations. Joshua asks him about his fee. Zero tells him this operation is on them, especially since he'll bring them something much more important in the future. He asks him if the family items he's looking for have any special power. Joshua tells him he doesn't need to know this information. Zero laughs and tells him he knew. He tells him, regarding the other information he requested from him, he'll visit him soon to inform him about it, and says he'll charge for this other information he requested through a service. Joshua is surprised and says they'll definitely ask him for a special favor when they need it in the future. Zero then leaves them and walks away, telling Joshua he'll come to him again soon. Joshua opens the information and keeps reading it. He learns that the Orphis family was a very powerful noble family, specializing in magic, and were on equal footing with the Rabica family. Everyone treated this family with great respect because the family leader was able to defeat a knight with sword master strength easily, and that this wizard was the first person in the world with magic warrior power. But this family's fame wasn't big in the kingdom like it was big in neighboring kingdoms, especially the magical kingdom of Terrier, to the point that its king himself asked the family leader to move with his family to his kingdom. But unfortunately, this was the family's end because they fell into the hands of the royal family there. Joshua says according to records, the kingdom of Avilion is currently disposing of all this family's possessions. But then he sees a name called Baron Accent. Jack asks him if he wants to know something about the Baron known as the Night Trader. Joshua asks him if he knows him. Jack tells him of course, and says he's a known trader in black market commerce, and that nothing passes through the black market without going through his hands, and that he's also the brother of Count Big whom they met a while ago. Joshua is surprised and says he didn't know this pig had brothers. Suddenly, Count Robrica and his daughter Ensel appear before Joshua and say they want to talk to him about something important. We continue the events by seeing a large palace in an area far from the capital, and we know that nobles show their power when their palaces are close to the royal palace. But this palace is located in a remote area in the capital, yet, at the same time, is very luxurious, with a huge amount of money spent on it, which shows the amount of money its owner possesses. The owner of this large palace turns out to be Baron Accent, owner of the black market in the kingdom. We then see this Baron speaking respectfully with a child named Shane, asking him what brought him to the palace and telling him that the deadline for their agreement is approaching, and he still hasn't brought him what he wants. The Baron tells him that he knows, but elves are very rare and hard to find, so he needs a bit more time. Shane tells him that he personally chose him from among everyone because he didn't want to hear excuses for failure. Accent apologizes to him, and Shane tells him he'll give him only 1 week. Accent gets happy and tells him definitely that he'll bring him what he wants within this week. Shane tells him that he must bring him the elves for his own good because if time passes, he won't be lenient with him. Accent says okay, and after Shane leaves, Accent becomes very upset and says his life gets worse every time he sees that bastard kid. Accent's personal servant asks him if 1 week will really be enough, and that most elves have already disappeared and they can't find any of them. Accent tells him that they must find them and that if he can't bring them, everything he built will fall on them, and that this bastard is just the son of Marquis Felix, but his father has great influence in the army and has gained the Emperor's complete trust, and he's sure this child can easily destroy them. We then go to Shane and his personal guard asks him if he's sure that Accent will be able to bring the elves within 1 week. Shane tells him he doesn't know, and that it's difficult for him. The guard wonders and asks him then why he set 1 week for him. Shane asks him what's the easiest way rulers control peoples. The guard tells him the carrot and stick method. Shane tells him that's correct, but there's a better way, and this way is fear, and that even if peoples are hungry and oppressed, they'll remain afraid of the ruler and won't oppose him, and then the ruler will bestow his scraps on them and they'll be satisfied. The guard laughs and tells him this means he knows that Accent will fail to bring the elves. Shane tells him exactly, and then he'll be so afraid of him that he'll beg him to let him live, and he'll show his mercy before him and let him live, and after that Baron Accent will become his loyal dog. The guard laughs and tells him he's a genius, Shane tells him he's hungry and they should go to the fancy restaurant to eat before returning to the palace. The guard says okay. We go back again to Joshua, who is with Count Rebecca, and Rebecca apologizes to them for disturbing them. Jack tells him no and that they were honored that he came personally to speak with them. Joshua says that Count Rebecca is who he knows and that he's a very good person. He says he's an unlucky person who was born with a weak body despite great magical power, but worse than that is his weak personality, and that he can never defend himself and always speaks even with people of lower status than him with complete respect because of this personality. Because of this, most nobles who knew him treated him with complete contempt because he's weak, but despite this, Count Rebecca is the only noble in the kingdom that common people respect and love. Ensel goes to Joshua and welcomes him, saying she saw his blue hair in the restaurant and immediately knew it was him. Joshua wonders, since when Ensel was talking by herself. Ensel tells Joshua she wants to talk to him about something important, but suddenly Shane arrives with his personal guard to the restaurant, saying how there are people in the restaurant at this late time, but then he notices Ensel and says since when was there a beautiful girl like her in the capital. He goes to ask her if this is her first time in the capital, and she doesn't reply to him. The guard intervenes and tells Ensel that this is the son of Marquis Felix, and she should show him respect. Joshua wonders why the son of one of the most powerful people influencing the emperor is here. Rebecca intervenes and apologizes to Shane for his daughter's behavior, saying she's shy. Shane asks him who he is, and he tells him he's Count Rebecca, head of the Monsil family. The guard tells Shane this is an important person in the kingdom. Shane tells Rebecca he doesn't want an apology from him but wants his daughter herself to apologize to him. Jack says this Shane is very stupid and how would a girl show respect to him when she doesn't even know him, and that the restaurant isn't an official place to show respect between nobles, and he's just trying to show off his family's power. And Count Rebecca should be the one demanding an apology from him. Shane pushes Rebecca out of his way and goes to ask Ensel if she understands what he's saying. She's afraid of him, and he tells her to apologize and show him respect immediately. But Joshua intervenes and tells him to stop being stupid, saying surely Marquis Felix is worried about his family as long as his only son who will inherit the family is this stupid. Shane gets angry and asks him how he dares speak to him like this. His personal guard draws his sword and tells him he surely wants to die, asking him who he is. Joshua tells him he drew his sword before a noble, and he surely knows the consequences of this decision well. The guard asks him what he's saying. Joshua tells him he must atone for the sin he committed in his life. The guard is shocked and says what kind of great bloodlust this is, and it's impossible for a child to have all this great bloodlust. Shane asks the guard what he's doing and why he still hasn't attacked this bastard. The guard tells him something is wrong. Joshua tells Shane he asked him about his name and that he's Ashwin Frederick. Shane wonders and tells him it's the first time he hears this name. Joshua tells him not to worry and that he'll make him remember his name very well from now on. We then go to Lodge Castle and see Count Beige, who is drugged with magic, and his daughter Anna is talking with a strange person named Joan. He tells her he arrived as quickly as possible after receiving her summons and asks her what happened. She tells him a monster appeared in Duke Aeginus's family. He wonders and asks her if she's talking about Babel. She tells him no, that it's the second son of Duke Aeginus and he's a child more brutal than even Babel. Joan is shocked and asks her how there's a child stronger than even Babel. She tells him Duke Aeginus is hiding all information about this child and is waiting for him to grow up and become much stronger to increase his family's name. Joan tells her this is very bad for them and all kingdoms are currently increasing their power tremendously. And for civilians, increasing the kingdom's army strength is natural and means the kingdom is safe. But kingdom leaders think differently and they're preparing for war. Anna tells him exactly. And brutal talents like Babel and Joshua are important for their war, and no country will participate in a war without any chance of winning. Joan tells her he'll start gathering information about what's happening. But the appearance of Aeginus's second child is very bad and will ruin all their plans, and they've been planning the kingdom's destruction for 10 years. And someone as powerful as Joshua can't be allowed to grow stronger than this because he'll stand in their way. Anna tells him not to worry and that she has a plan, and she'll join Avilian Royal Academy with Joshua and use all her intelligence and power to force Joshua to join them in the war against the kingdom. We go back again to Joshua and Shane tells him he's never heard of his family. Joshua asks him if his family name is important to him. Shane tells him no, and that he'll disappear with his family anyway because he interfered in something that doesn't concern him, and tells Joshua to come back before him and beg him, and he might forgive him. Joshua laughs at him and tells him he's really stupid. Shane gets angry and tells his personal guard to discipline him quickly. The guard is shocked and draws his sword and goes to attack Joshua, saying that despite his great bloodlust, he's a 10-year-old child and won't be able to do anything against him. He attacks Joshua, saying he'll finish him with just one strike, but Joshua blocks his hand with his sword, and everyone is shocked. Joshua attacks with his mana-covered hand against the guard and defeats him. Shane is shocked and says how he defeated Euchre, a B-level knight, with just his hand, and it's the first time he's heard of such a thing, and it's impossible for a child to have all this power. Joshua asks Shane how he'll deal with him and that he doesn't intend to show mercy even if he begs him, and he's not merciful to that degree. Shane gets angry and asks him what his family name is. Joshua tells him, he told him, it's Frederick. Shane screams at him, saying he's never heard of a family called Frederick, and he surely doesn't know the punishment for treating a noble like him this way, and that he's the heir of Marquis Felix, one of the 12 most powerful families in the kingdom. Joshua goes to attack him and hits him in the face, telling him he's tired of his talk. Shane staggers away and faints, and Joshua goes to him asking what he's doing and how he fainted from just one hit, and he hasn't finished punishing him yet. He grabs him to continue beating him, asking him where his strength and his family's power are that he was bragging about, and that he's basically weak and doesn't deserve his time. Suddenly, guard Miyuker intervenes and tells him they were rude to them, and he apologizes on behalf of his master and begs him to show them mercy. Miyuker says he doesn't know who this boy is, but looking at his mana power, he's sure he's an A-level sword master, and surely from one of the very powerful secret families, and he can get rid of Shane and him easily without any consequences. Joshua tells him he's stupid, and told him that the moment he drew his sword before him, he should have accepted the consequences, and he warned him he's not merciful to his enemies. Miyuker is shocked and says his killing intent is terrible and he really intends to kill them. Miyuker backs away and apologizes to him, telling him to show them mercy and that he'll offer his hand as atonement for their sins, and that he failed to protect his master, so he deserves punishment, and he can also take his life and leave his master alive. Joshua says this stupid knight reminds him of the same stupid knight from his previous life, who always tried to protect him in his life. Joshua tells Miyuker he told him he's not merciful to his enemies, grabs Shane, breaks his chain, takes his ring from it, and tells Miyuker he'll stay in the capital for a while, and if Shane wants his family ring back, he should come to his place and apologize to him, or else he'll sell it in the black market. Jack then tells Joshua he didn't know he gets angry to this degree. Joshua tells him this is all part of his plan and only he's allowed to get angry, but he doesn't move without his orders. Jack says okay. Count Rebecca watches Joshua and says every time he looks at him, he finds his power has become much greater, and he's an amazing person. Ensel goes to her father and tells him she wants to do something important, and leaves him quickly and runs. Rebecca looks at Miyuker and tells him he can direct him to a nearby clinic to treat Shane there. After waking up, Shane finds himself in the clinic after receiving treatment. He tells Miyuker that this bastard disfigured his face, and orders him to bring that bastard to him immediately so he can punish him. Miyuker tells him it's impossible for him to do anything against him with his current strength. Shane hits him and says he's a weak bastard. How does a knight lose to a 10-year-old child? He'll punish him once they return to their palace. Miyuker agrees, and Shane tells him he wants him to gather everything he knows about Frederick's family, saying he'll kill them all, even their servants. Miyuker tells him it's impossible to do that because they have no justification to attack them. Shane asks him what more proof they need than this. He's the heir of the Phyllis family. He was beaten and humiliated and almost died at the hands of that bastard. Miyuker tells him no one will believe that a 10-year-old child did this to them, and if they do anything against them, their family's reputation will fall so low they won't be nobles anymore. Shane says it doesn't matter and he wants him to carry out his orders. Miyuker yells at him, saying he told him their family's honor would fall, and honor is the most important thing for nobles. Shane is surprised that Miyuker is yelling at him. Miyuker tells him that if his father, the Marquis, heard what happened, his punishment wouldn't be just a simple punishment. Shane tells him not to worry, he has a plan. They'll hide the evidence and kill anyone who knows anything, like always. Rebecca's family is weaker than them, and they don't need to fear her. Miyuker tells him that actually there's evidence of what happened. The boy who beat him took his magic Duke ring and it disappeared. Miyuker says he took it from him and told him, if he wants it back, he should go beg for it. Regardless of the ring's importance to them, it would be a disaster if anyone found out that the Phyllis family heir had his family's magic Duke ring taken from him. He says they can't use violence anymore, and he needs to calm down and think of peaceful solutions. Shane says it's impossible for him to go apologize to that child. Miyuker suggests sending a substitute for himself. Shane is surprised and says he knows someone good. We return to Joshua, who is with Jack. Jack asks if Shane will really come to apologize to him. Joshua says no, he'll definitely send a substitute instead, and this substitute must be someone powerful yet obedient to Shane, so no one finds out anything. Jack asks who they'll send. Joshua says he thinks they'll definitely send Baron Accent, who is Shane's puppet in the capital. Jack is shocked, saying he thought Joshua made enemies with the Phyllis family just because he got angry, but he was actually planning all this from the beginning, and always plans for his expectations. Suddenly, Ensel arrives and thanks Joshua for helping them. Joshua tells her there's no need to thank him and he wasn't doing this to help them. She says no, without his help, she and her family would all be in danger, but now they're better because of him. Joshua wonders, she's supposed to be the strongest witch in the world in the future, but her personality is completely different from what he knew. She was a killer who wasn't affected by the number of people she killed, and the title Ice Witch suited her because of what she did to her enemies in the future. Ensel tells Joshua that her family will support him if any problems arise from this incident, and they'll testify before the royal family if needed. Joshua tells her not to worry, nothing will happen, but since she insists, he'll ask her for a favor in the future. She's happy and says okay, she'll do anything for him. Joshua then looks at someone watching them outside the restaurant and laughs. The person quickly disappears from his sight. This person watching him turns out to be Zero, who says he managed to discover he was watching him and what happened is impossible. He says he's sure of his stealth ability and even a knight at sword master level couldn't detect him. So how did he detect him? The rumors were true. This Joshua isn't a normal human. He thought he was lying about the Moon Gate, but if he has this level of power, he was speaking seriously. He wonders what the organization leader's judgment regarding Joshua will be if they knew he knows about the Moon Gate. He has no choice but to obey Joshua's orders for now until he understands everything about him. Baron Accent then appears at the restaurant door and finds Count Rebecca and his daughter Ensel leaving. He says he's reached the right place and enters to meet Joshua, who laughs as soon as he sees him and says he expected him to come. Accent greets Joshua by his alias, Ashvin Frederick. Jack is surprised, saying Accent is a very powerful expert, and although he's just a baron, his power in the black market makes him considered among the high-ranking nobles. So how is he bowing and greeting Joshua, even though they told him he's just a count's son from the east? Baron Accent tells Joshua he came representing his master Shane and wants the Duke ring he took, saying this ring is important to them. Joshua tells him he asks Shane to come himself and tells him to go back and tell him to come get the ring himself. Accent gets angry and asks Joshua if they can reach an alternative solution, saying his master Shane is tired right now. Joshua tells him this. Shane is very weak and tells him to go bring Knight Muker who was with Shane, then they'll talk. Accent asks if he'll really give them the ring. Joshua says maybe if they reach an agreement, but he must take something from them first in exchange for allowing them to negotiate with him in the first place. He looks at the rings on Accent's hand and says these rings look expensive, and he wants them in exchange for the opportunity he gave them. Joshua then walks with Jack, and Jack tells him he's a devil. He took such a precious treasure from them and also took Baron Accent's ring without any feeling. Joshua tells him he didn't take anything from them, it was just trade because he'll give them an opportunity in exchange for this ring. Jack asks why he chose this particular ring of Accent's. Joshua tells him this is a special ring that belonged to the Orphis family called the Moon Tears ring. He says because of the elves' beauty and good nature, humans exploited them and started hunting them to enslave them. Because of this, many of them died and the survivors fled to the forest and made a kingdom for themselves there. To protect themselves from humans, they made a very strong protective shield over the forest, so humans couldn't enter it. But this protective shield was so strong that it drained the life from the elves who operated it, and all the elves who operated this shield died except one who was able to maintain it. The rest of the elves gathered around her from then on, and she became their queen, named Olympus. After decades of peace in the elf kingdom, the only person who could find their secret forest location was the wizard, Zeros, leader of the Orphis family, who was a personal friend of elf queen Olympus. But unfortunately, as soon as he learned the locations of the elf kingdom, he disappeared completely. All the rumors that appeared said he disappeared because of his relationship with Queen Terrier, but this is all misleading information. He's sure someone killed him while trying to interrogate him about the elf forest location. The fact that no one has found the forest location until now means Zeros didn't confess anything to them. After the elf kingdom heard what happened to their friend Zeros, they finally revealed themselves to the human kingdom to find out what happened to Zeros. But unfortunately, they found no one from his family except one of his daughters who had been turned into a slave by a noble family. She then took her hands and cried over her, and the tears that fell turned into a very powerful ring. This ring has been known since then as the Elf Tears ring. This girl died from illness sometime after receiving the ring, and the ring continued to circulate in the market until now. He heard this ring has very special power. Jack then speaks to Joshua, saying they've finally reached their palace, and they need to rest. Joshua tells Jack he wants a favor from him. Jack asks what. Joshua says this request is to protect him and make him strong in the future. Jack wonders and asks what. Joshua tells him he wants him to leave this palace and go to the palace where his mother, Lucia, and Duke Aegenis are. Jack is shocked and says, but if he goes there and becomes Lucia's personal guard, who will protect him? Joshua tells him not to worry, he'll protect himself. but he's currently pretending to be a weak count's son, and since arriving in the capital he's made many enemies. Surely, this boy Shane and his family won't leave him alone and will try to get revenge. He needs to be with him to protect him. Joshua tells him not to worry, he'll handle them. He says this isn't an order, but a request from him. He wants him to go learn from Duke Agenis to become strong, so he can help him in the future. Jack is surprised and says he's insistent. He says, since that's the case, he wants a request from him too. Joshua asks him what. He says he wants to be so strong that in the future he won't bow to anyone except him. Joshua promises him he'll be the strongest in the world and won't bow to anyone except him. Jack says, okay. He'll carry out his words and go to Lady Lucia's palace and leave him alone. We then go to half the continent and see a large tower known as the Sorcerer's Tower, surrounded by 3 very powerful kingdoms. We see a meeting of the Sorcerer's Tower leaders led by the Sorcerer Ian, who asks them where are the Fire and Lightning Sorcerer, the Void Sorcerer, and the Earth Sorcerer. Marcus tells him that the Fire and Void Sorcerers don't like to be in the same place together, and the Lightning Sorcerer said he has an urgent mission he wants to finish. Ian tells them it doesn't matter and that they'll start the meeting without them, and that they gathered today to talk about primitive stones. Storm Sorcerer Seda is surprised and tells him it's not his habit to jump straight into the topic. Marcus tells him to respect Ian since he's their leader, and he says okay. Ian is surprised and tells Seda he wasn't expecting him to attend this meeting. Seda tells him he came because he said this meeting was important, and asks if he heard correctly that someone took the primitive stone, magma. Marcus tells him it's not just the magma stone, but also the lightning stone. Bronto has disappeared. Seda is shocked, and Ian says it's the first time he knows what happened to Bronto. Ice Sorceress Alicia tells them that only this council of sorcerers knows the importance of the primitive stones, and that whoever took these stones might not know anything about them, which is a problem for them. Ian tells her he has an idea who might have taken the magma stone, but he doesn't know who took the Bronto stone. Seda tells them he knows why the lightning sorcerer left everything and went to investigate the matter. Marcus tells them he learned impressive information, AMC, that in the area near the Bronto stone, there are reports of a magical swordsman appearing. Everyone is shocked and asks him if this magical swordsman is related to the person they know. Marcus tells them no, and that the magical swordsman who appeared is a 9-year-old child. Everyone is shocked and says, how can he be a magical swordsman at 9 years old? Ian tells them to be quiet and tells Marcus that the lightning sorcerer is currently in the kingdom of Avalion looking for the Bronto stone, and that he'll have him verify this child's power. He tells Marcus that he and Marcus should also look for the magma stone, and that if the information he received was correct, they unfortunately might not be able to do anything to retrieve this stone. Alicia asks Ian if this boy who appeared belongs to the cursed person, since any magical swordsman becomes his follower. Ian tells her to calm down and that he knows her feelings well, but this isn't the truth. Alicia tells him she won't be able to calm down until she knows what this child's relationship is to the cursed person. Marcus tells her that according to his information, there's no relationship between this child and him, and that this child is the second son of Duke Agonis. Seda yells at Marcus, saying he should have told him this information long ago. Ian yells at them to stop arguing, saying their mission is surveillance for now and they won't interfere until they know the complete truth. He tells them to go and watch the situation calmly. They tell him okay. And Ian then says the situation in their world is changing very quickly and he doesn't know if it's for better or worse. We then go to Joshua, who starts using the ancient language to activate the Ring of Tears of the Elves. Jack is surprised and says how does Joshua know about the ancient language that only senior sorcerers know, which means he really is a magical swordsman. Joshua manages to release the magic inside the Ring of Tears of the Elves. Jack asks if he's okay, and Joshua says yes. Jack asks him why this ring had the ancient language on it and what special powers it has. Joshua tells him, this ring has a 7th level magical shield that reacts automatically and protects its owner in dangerous situations, and also increases the ability to communicate with spirits, and that it has other abilities he still doesn't know about. Jack is surprised and asks if he can take this elf ring and use it. Joshua tells him this ring only activates with females, not males, and that they can't use it, so he intends to send it to Lucia's mother to wear to increase her protection. We then go to Zero, who contacts his mistress. His mistress asks him about the reason for his sudden call and whether this is related to Joshua. Zero tells her yes, and that this child is not normal. His mistress tells him she knows and that this child is special. Zero tells her that the word special doesn't do him justice. His mistress asks him if he knows that the Sorcerer's Tower has started moving to find Joshua. Zero is shocked and asks her why the Sorcerer's Tower wants Joshua. His mistress tells him the Sorcerer's Tower is looking for him because they think he's the heir of the magical swordsman in Salt. She tells him the Sorcerer's Tower is currently using the missing primitive stones as an excuse to find Joshua and capture him. She tells him she's not interested in the primitive stones or the swordsman in Salt, but she's interested in Joshua and that he's the center of everything happening now. Even the Moon Gate coin they're looking for, he knows about it. Zero is surprised, and she tells him that if she weren't busy, she would go to Joshua herself. But unfortunately, the Succession War's consequences still haven't ended in the organization, and she must stay in her place. She says she could easily control the organization if he brought her the Moon Gate coin from Joshua. Zero tells her not to worry and that he'll bring it to her from Joshua. She tells him okay and that she's counting on him. We then go to Count Big, who's out in these places for a stroll. This time, there's a lightning sorcerer torturing him, telling him to look at his power carefully, and shows a group of monsters from the dark forest trying to attack them. But this sorcerer attacks them with his lightning and easily destroys them. Big is terrified by his power, and this sorcerer goes to Big and asks him whose magic was stronger, or what Joshua uses. Big tells him he's a noble in the kingdom of Avelion and that he can't imagine the kingdom will leave him alone after what he did to him. This sorcerer gets angry and tells him that if he was afraid of the kingdom of Avelion, he wouldn't have come to his land and done this to him. He asks him if Joshua is really a magical swordsman and whether his power is greater than his or not. Big tells him that in terms of power, his magical power is greater than Joshua's power. This sorcerer tells him his assumption was correct, and that the magical swordsman in Salt's magical element wasn't lightning, and that surely this child took the Bronto stone, and that he must go meet this child, Joshua. But the problem for him is that he won't be able to penetrate Duke Aeginus's palace. Big tells him he's going to the wrong place. The sorcerer asks him what he means. Big tells him that Joshua went with his father Aeginus to the royal capital and entered the academy. This sorcerer is shocked and says that penetrating Duke Aeginus's area alone was difficult, so trying to penetrate the capital full of strong monsters like Aeginus will be very difficult. Big tells this sorcerer that he'll help him. This sorcerer is surprised and asks him why. Big tells him if he intends to hurt Joshua, he'll help him because he doesn't like this arrogant child. The sorcerer laughs and asks him how he'll help. Big tells him that according to the mark under his eye and his great lightning power, he's sure he's the lightning sorcerer from the Sorcerer's Tower, Jackie Esther. Esther is surprised and tells Big he didn't expect someone like him would know his identity. Big tells him he knows a lot of information, and that if he cooperates with him, he'll get him to Joshua easily. Esther tells him that despite his tempting offer, he doesn't like to ally with weaklings like him. Big asks him what he means. Esther tells him he doesn't trust him and feels he's a traitor who might leak his identity and put him in danger. He summons his lightning magic above Big. Big is terrified and asks him what he's doing, saying if he kills him, the whole kingdom and Duke Aeginus will start hunting him. Esther attacks him with his lightning and kills him, telling him he's stupid, and the kingdom won't care about the death of a pig like him. Some time passes, and Joshua enters the Royal Academy. He's now 10 years old. We learn this academy is divided into 6 stages, and students advance to the next stage through a test held every year until they graduate. Joshua believed that if he spent 6 years in this place, he could reach the 5th level of magical spear arts. We then see Joshua looking for his room in the academy with the other students. Joshua says all the students here have their servants with them, which was expected from nobles. Joshua reaches his room and finds it's a room for 3 people. He hopes his roommates aren't annoying like Shane, and that he doesn't want to get into conflicts at the academy and focus on more important matters. At that moment, Joshua's first roommate arrives, carrying many bags, and asks Joshua to help him. Joshua actually helps him bring them down. This boy then introduces himself to Joshua, saying his name is Agares, and that he hopes they'll be friends. Joshua is happy and says he's a normal person, not like the jerks who exploit their family's power. Joshua introduces himself as Ashvin Frederick. Agares is surprised and says he's never heard of this family before. At that moment, Joshua's third roommate arrives, Akirias, and introduces himself. Joshua and Agares are shocked and say they know this jerk. Joshua says this is Akirias, who was known in his time as the Heavenly Mind. He says the war for the throne began in the kingdom of Avelion between the first and second princes, after Emperor Marcus disappeared, and that both entered major battles, claiming they wanted to bring stability to the country. In the end, the first prince won the war and managed to seize everything in the kingdom that belonged to the second prince. The main reason the first prince won the war were 2 people. First was the 4th prince Caesar, who planned to rule after the first prince, and second was the genius with the heavenly mind, Akirias.